The whole story begins in the square of the Andalusian Empire with a girl lying down, her hands and feet bound by chains. A man asks if the great master Senti was ready to sacrifice the Black Dragon 6, who is not sure if he could take it all at once. The hooded person next to him replies that the black must be placed under this dragon's heart. Actually, something happened last month. He stupidly tried to steal the main dragon from the public mountain, only to end up being expelled and able to stir up a lot of wind and waves. It didn't take long before people started screaming when the great black dragon came rushing and lunged at the girl lying down. He grabbed the girl, who was the bait, and the mage ordered everyone to start attacking. So the people kept firing, but the dragon still flew away. Later, the dragon landed with the girl and lay down complaining, but ended up letting out some sounds that even he was shocked by. He couldn't believe that his words were merging with some dragon noises, and he was surprised himself when he noticed he had huge claws. And when he fell, he also felt pain until he could look at himself in the reflection of the water and discover that he was a dragon. He wonders if he was sent to another reality and transformed into a dragon or something like that. And above all, a very strange dragon. Then he looked to the side and saw a girl, which made him worried about whether she was okay. She didn't look good at all, seemed like a serious case of a sick, pretty girl, and he wondered what she would think of a dragon's breath like his. That's when he suddenly received a notification greeting him from the War Plunder system, which was at his service. But to his surprise, it wasn't just one, but 3 systems that greeted him. Besides War Plunder, the Villain system, and the Transformation system were also at his service. The dragon was so impressed that it could be possible he ended up being chosen as something legendary. The system intended to start with the Fusion system. It was the ultimate system of invincible super evolution. He wonders what the evil dragon system could do. Apparently, the host didn't need to say anything. Special abilities could be activated by having the favor of a special female NPC, and that was it. He could spend system points to remodel all parts of his body too, and the dragon wonders what that meant. He wonders if this whole player and NPC thing was blending some game reality or something similar. He could click on the enemy's point to kill and gain half the power of justice, and soon the system noticed he had plundered an SS-class female NPC. Therefore, the system privileges weren't enabled, and he could see the girl mumbling because she was cold lying on the ground. The protagonist took some time to pick up the books around to read and try to understand what was going on around him. It was still shocking that he was interested in these things, even when in his past life he was a man named Sunayan. The dragon tried to let the girl lie on his tail, but she was still feeling cold. His classification was truly extraordinary. It seemed he really was the great chosen one. The system soon detected the SS of rank NPC and could display the character panel. The girl was 18 years old, hungry, cold, and infected with a disease with only a few days of life expectancy. Only 2 days were left until her life would be lost, and the protagonist was surprised that her life could be discarded so quickly. As expected, there was no free lunch in any world, and he gets nervous because the girl kept making those embarrassing sounds while sleeping. So he put a bare skin on her, found while scavenging the surroundings. He hoped that would keep her warm. He gained 10 more favorability points. Covering her with a blanket increased favorability a bit. Things seemed pretty easy to solve. He asks the system for something to increase favorability, but the system mocks him by refusing. The protagonist is outraged because he gained a body he couldn't even move, was on the brink of death, and wonders how he could find food to gain favorability. He at least wanted to receive a starter pack or something like that, and the system notifies him that he actually made a valid point now. So issues a beginner's starter pack with a 30-minute temporary recovery card. He should use the temporary recovery card to temporarily increase his strength, but it would cause weakness for an hour after the effect. Therefore, after using the card, he should quickly return home. The protagonist is a bit shocked by the kind of power he just got. But using the card was the only option he had at the moment because he was too weak to move. He tells the system that he wanted to use the temporary recovery card, and he receives a notification saying it was activated. He could only value his life now. When he left the cave, the protagonist went to a tree and realized that being a dragon, he couldn't eat grass or just anything random. He had to find some meat, otherwise he would end up starving due to lack of food. It didn't take long for him to get a good amount of meat, but it also didn't take long for him to find out that the meat belonged to other animals. A group of level 3 magical beasts appeared to defend their territory. The wolves had a strong sense of territoriality. Apparently, he had discovered their food source, which was why they suddenly jumped out to defend it. It really wasn't easy being a dragon. But he still wondered why he was feeling so nervous and decided to just attack the opponents who appeared suddenly. It didn't take long for the protagonist to finish off the monsters and return to the cave with a terrifying aura that made the girl tremble in fear. Meanwhile, the protagonist kept wondering if she still hadn't woken up. It seemed she was indeed very sick. But if she kept fainted, it would be difficult to feed her as she was when suddenly she stood up and yelled at the villain to go away. She tried to attack him, but he simply ignored it and placed an apple in her mouth, creating a funny scene. She spit out the apple, asking if he intended to eat her, and he thought he wouldn't do anything like that actually. In reality, the perspective of the girl named Anna was that the great dragon was just roaring at her in a frightening way. It was so shocking that she fainted from fright, and he wanted to wake her up again even though she had lost consciousness. The protagonist asks what was wrong with Anna, and the system says she got a high body temperature that could cause her to faint. The protagonist says he just killed a silver moon wolf, so he should have points in the system. The system agrees. He managed to kill 3 second-order silver moon wolves. They were just hostile, so the system points were halved. Now he had obtained 30 system points for that, and they congratulated the protagonist for earning his first system points. The system shop was now open. He had to find something to cure the girl's illness, and the system analyzed his current condition to see what would be best. It was recommended that the host use 10 system points for a special offer to exchange for the Chinese herbal medicine Huanqin. Huanqin was a Chinese medicine used to treat high fever, and he wondered if the system store also had things from Earth and his previous world. He asked the system to get the Huanqin for him, and soon the item was successfully materialized into his hands. Taking the medicine, he asks how he should use it, but it seemed only he could make it work. He eats the item and breathes his breath on Anna's face, which ends up affecting her, and the protagonist realizes too late that he was suffering from the temporary card's time limit. His body could no longer hold on. His body felt very heavy. Meanwhile, Anna woke up in a very warm place, feeling very thirsty. When she looked up, she saw the great black dragon flying toward her, so she ducked down crying in fear. A little later, she woke up feeling a bitter taste of medicine in her mouth. This time, she was in the cave with the dragon around her. Anna wonders if she was really saved by him, and the protagonist gains 20 more favorability points. The girl realizes that the dragon also got fruits specifically for her, and that makes her smile because the dragon seemed quite kind. And so the protagonist acquired 40 more favorability points, and she approaches to try to wake the dragon up. Anna gets worried because he doesn't move to the point of seeming dead and wonders if it was because of the stab she inflicted earlier. She asks the dragon to get better soon, caressing him, and the system alerts the protagonist of a new notification. The favorability reached the requirement of the first stage. Congratulations for obtaining the Beginner Devouring skill with 2,000 points. Beginner Devouring was a skill where he could eat to quickly restore his body and generate a certain amount of energy. But correspondingly, food intake would also feed it. Now this skill was solidified. Sometime later, the protagonist woke up feeling hungry, not understanding how he could feel that way since he had just eaten meat. When he realized it, it seemed like he had fallen asleep and acquired a skill. He almost felt happy believing he had done something so simple with good luck. Even so, every cell in his body was now screaming for food. He could barely contain himself. When he looked to the side, he saw Anna asleep and even considered for a moment using her as his food. But then he took a deep breath to calm himself. He couldn't eat her, especially because her favorability was at 90 points. And what shocked the protagonist the most was seeing that he had 90 favorability points with Anna, and he wondered when it had gotten so high. He wonders if something happened while he was sleeping. Maybe she had been impressed by his great majesty. He was big and powerful. She could even have fallen in love with him. But he snapped out of that fantasy when he saw her coughing up blood. Realizing that Anna had suddenly become very weak, the system explains that besides gaining abilities, the conquest of an NPC also granted him 2,000 system points. The basic threshold for body modification had been reached, and the body modification function was unlocked. He supposed he was partially responsible. He just didn't know what kind of illness she had. Using medicine to prolong her life definitely wasn't a long-term solution. The protagonist opened the system shop and found various items from his original world, which shocked him. After all, it required 10,000 points to buy things. Only a lunatic would spend that much on such basic stuff. He wonders if the system shop could really be like this when there was an unconscious girl suffering beside him. He even ended up seeing a beautiful dress that would look good on her, and he bought the dress to put on her. Anna wore the dress and he turned his face away. He couldn't even look because dragons had barbs underneath. But before focusing on clothes, he would take care of her illness first and told the system to open the body modification function. There were external modifications: reinforced teeth for 400 points, iron scales for 400 points, and general appearance modification for 10,000 points. Internal modifications could be classified as blood vessels, heart, muscles, facial features, and internal organs. The protagonist decides to start by looking for modifications related to medical treatment, picking an item that allows a rudimentary understanding of certain things and conditions. This one was unique, and he decides to exchange for the eye modification with basic insight. The system says the modifications would begin immediately. He should be aware that discomfort could occur during the process, so he could refrain from worrying too much. When the change started happening, he writhed and complained because he felt so much pain and was even scratching his eyes. But with that, he could check Anna's condition, analyzing her twisted ankle and small abrasions on her body. The number of things affecting her left the protagonist impressed that she was still alive after all that. Suddenly, a group of people appeared at the entrance of the cave saying they had seen dragon breath not long ago. There should be one nearby. The group of black mercenaries appeared, but in the protagonist's opinion, they were a bunch of weak characters. There was a large level 21 knight named Wells and also Selena, a level 18 fire mage. The protagonist realizes that these mercenaries were not there for a friendly visit or anything of the sort, and he tells the system to modify basic reinforced claws and teeth. Scales could also be changed. The modification would start immediately. It would consume 1,000 system points. It didn't take long for his whole body to change rapidly. When he came out of the cave, the protagonist encountered the group of mercenaries and all of them saw him flying through the skies. Wells tells everyone to prepare for the new battle, and Selena wonders if that black dragon was really the same one as before, since it looked so different. She tells everyone to get ready because something felt off, and Wells calls her a coward for acting like that. He tells everyone to ignore Selena's words. If she hadn't failed to cast the binding spell in the previous square, maybe it could have captured the black dragon from the beginning. Selena becomes furious with his cruel words, and Wells simply orders everyone to keep their eyes on the black dragon that was flying west. They should follow him. She was shocked, wondering why he was flying toward the depths of the forest in that direction toward the outer edge. She wonders if it could be possible that the dragon's treasure was in that direction. He could be luring them the other way to avoid detection. The protagonist keeps flying and drawing everyone's attention before charging at the mercenaries and attacking them. His points just keep increasing as he takes down each of his opponents, Wells also charges at him to kill the dragon. But to his shock, his attacks didn't even leave a scratch on the dragon. The protagonist turned around laughing. He had wondered why his back was itching. It felt like fleas, but it was just the weak attacks he was feeling. Wells was furious, unable to understand how this could be possible, and the protagonist has to ask that in his next life. It didn't take long for Wells to be defeated, and all the mercenaries ran off in desperation because the Great Knight had been killed. But the dragon didn't intend to let them escape so easily. They would all become system points to make him stronger. The system congratulated the protagonist even though some of them managed to flee. Despite that, he obtained 150 system points from the battle. Still, it seemed like someone was missing, and he turned around remembering that the mage had stayed behind. When the protagonist returned to the cave, he found Selena using healing magic on Anna, but she got scared upon seeing him rise. Selena stood up, telling the dragon to stay back. She was trying to save Anna's life even though she was afraid of dying. She used a spell to keep the dragon away, but quickly became exhausted. The protagonist didn't understand what that was about. Seeing the protagonist writhing where he stood and the dragon unable to move due to the magic, Selena laughed in his face. The dragon got tired of playing with her and broke the spell with one attack, knocking Selena down with his paw and stopping her from continuing to use magic. He asked who sent her there, but realized he was just growling, and got worried since he should be able to speak the human language now. He wanted to communicate and asked the system how many points would be needed to modify his vocal cords. The system replied that vocal cord modification required 300 system points, and he now had 280 system points. This system now offered a loan service as well. The loan required an additional 50% interest, and it asked if he wanted to try it. The protagonist froze in shock. After all, 50% was a lot. It felt like he was being openly robbed. The system simply said it couldn't perform actions that violated system laws, which made the dragon sigh. He thought this was the only way for now, and asked the system to exchange for the vocal cord modification. The vocal cord modification was successfully solidified. This loan with principal and interest required repayment of 330 points to the system later. Putting those details aside, the protagonist questioned Selena to find out who had sent her and what her purpose was. The girl was surprised he could speak this whole time, but he kept demanding that she speak quickly because he had low patience. She replied that they were mercenaries hired by King Amlius to hunt the black dragon and nourish the prince of the kingdom. The protagonist asked what they meant by nourish, and she said there were rumors that Prince Amlius had problems producing an heir. Only by eating the heart of a dragon and its private parts would he be cured. The protagonist couldn't believe what he had just heard. Meanwhile, Prince Amlius was shocked because they still hadn't found the black dragon and questioned whether they were any good at all. Amlius asked his knight what Master Mason had said. The knight replied that Mason had transmigrated into a dragon. He inherited the power of the original dragon at the 8th level and in just 1 month was able to cross the Gen Mountains. But using the tracking formation consumed a lot of energy and magical materials. In fact, Mason said they would have to pay him more than before. Amlius was shocked because they had already given him 3,000 gold, yet the old man still wanted even more even after being knighted. Even so, he ordered that they give him another 500 gold. If that wasn't enough, then nothing else would be. Meanwhile, in the cave, the dragon kept the mage detained for a while, focusing on learning more from the system. He could use the available healing potion of resistance. There was also the accelerated aura potion for meditation. The protagonist approached Selena asking if she could heal him, and she refused to heal a dragon. So the protagonist's side released Selena and brought her to where Anna was. A girl asked if he even knew that Anna was a princess. The dragon replied that he did know, even thinking that not just anyone could be an SSS rank NPC. Selena asked if he intended to save her, and the protagonist agreed because, after all, they were good friends. With a favorability of 90 points, they should be considered that way, or at least, that's what he wanted to believe. Hearing that left Selena surprised, but Anna ended up discovering later that even Selena was SSS rank, and he was relieved that he hadn't wasted his points on her in the beginning. Putting that aside, the protagonist asked how Anna was doing. Selena said they shouldn't be optimistic. She had suffered so much damage that even a recovery potion was nowhere near enough. He asked what else she might need, and Selena replied that a clean and tidy environment, enough medicine and food, and a skilled priest would be good. The protagonist questioned why they needed to find a priest, and she explained that she actually wasn't a professional mage specialized in healing. Beside them, Anna woke up asking them to stop arguing. She was grateful enough and thanked the dragon for trying to help. He was relieved to see her awake, but he could tell that Anna was feeling emotionally unstable. She needed some comfort at that moment. Being the case, he moved closer, and Selena reminded him that just because Anna said she was okay didn't mean he could eat her. Ignoring Selena, he approached and tore off the heavy chains from her body. It seemed they needed to find a new place to live. He held them both and said that place was no longer safe. They should find a new shelter quickly. Anna agreed, and thus he gained 10 more favorability points, reaching a total of 100 points. The protagonist received a system notification alerting him that he had reached 100 favorability points for the first time, and so he earned 1,000 system points as a reward. The three went to another place where he could prepare meat, and the girls were delighted by the good smell of the food. While they were busy eating, suddenly the protagonist stopped upon seeing a group of demi-beasts watching them, noticing something was wrong. But to his complete shock, the demi-beast approached and touched the dragon. Surprised that really was a true dragon. He never thought he would see a living dragon in his entire life, and even bowed, declaring he would offer the Broken Fang tribe and become his servant. That was a man with a dog's head, named Porikuri of the 7th level, and suddenly the protagonist found himself before a tribe swearing loyalty to him. The protagonist said he really was weak. There was no point in having them as servants, and they couldn't even be true allies anyway. Porikuri responded with laughter that even though they were weak, they could find a dragon's lair, mines, and scales just for him. They could even plan a glorious future for his wealth. But the dragon didn't understand any of it. They didn't seem afraid of losing anything in the end. Everything would depend on the group's sincerity, but now he needed a spacious and dry dragon's lair, and asked if they could fulfill their promise by helping with that. Porikuri agreed with the words of his lord, and so the group headed in the direction of a place where there was food and cluster houses. That was where the Broken Fang tribe lived, and the protagonist received notifications saying he was gaining favorability points from Anna and Selena. From that day on, the Black Dragon intended to accept the tribe's loyalty, and the moment they accepted his protection, they would share in the legacy of the dragons. And in the name of the dragon, he swore to return protection and stability to the tribe. The group of beastmen celebrated. The protagonist asked if Porikuri wished to become his familiar, and he agreed emotionally because he had dreamed of that his whole life. This made the dragon sigh. That ritual sense of making him a familiar was complicated, but necessary to forge their loyalty. He touched Porikuri's forehead with his own blood, and thus a stone appeared on his body, making him part of his servants. The dragon asked Porikuri what was going on with the rest of his tribe. He hadn't imagined there were so many kobolds in the group. The others said their master should decide for them. Not long ago, the kobold tribe was attacked by a group of ettercaps. They led a horde of demonic spiders and ended up stealing the territory, occupying the kobold's former mine. They led part of the tribe to escape and settle in this current cave. The protagonist was surprised to hear about that. A mine meant money, and money meant he could buy some recovery potions to temporarily ease Anna's illness, and he could even sleep on a bed of gold. So he asked Porikuri what kind of mine their tribe used to occupy and how many ettercaps there were. Porikuri reported that it was a silver mine. There were 5 ettercaps. They were brutal by nature, after all, and they had a particular taste for sucking out brain matter. Ettercaps also had a mouthpiece similar to a flute. It was used to control their spiders, and there were countless of them. The protagonist asked the system if he had the status panel for the ettercaps. The system said it had no available information. He could even buy a book to find out what they were. He was shocked that such a tattered book cost 900 points. It was simply a massive rip-off, which made him furious at the system. He even wanted a refund. Even Anna was confused, asking what was wrong, but he himself didn't know how to explain. Anyway, he took the book and got information, including appearance and details about the ettercap. It had a strong, upright torso, compound eyes, and sharp, venomous fangs. It was a wicked level 28 group, but each one reached level 3. They were creatures that controlled spiders, feared fire, and had shells with defensive properties. They could resist acid and water attacks. The protagonist felt that just looking at their appearance was breaking his sanity. His dragon's acid breath would have limited effect on them. Close combat risked being surrounded by their spider hordes. If he could modify his dragon breath, maybe they have a chance, and he wondered how he could cultivate system points. He checked and found he could obtain new abilities, but for 1,000 points, he could modify his dragon breath in various different ways. So he asked Porikuri if there was a human bandit camp nearby, or perhaps a group of black beast mercenaries or something like that. Porikuri agreed. There were in fact 2 bandit groups nearby, but they were only blood lion mercenaries. Still, he hadn't heard of any black beast mercenaries, and the protagonist ordered him to gather half the kobold soldiers. They could go together to the nearest bandit group. Hostile forces usually yielded higher system points, and bandit groups were concentrated, not dispersed, which was ideal, the perfect place to farm system points. With that, he told the girls to stay in the kobold village because it was safer, and warned Selena not to run away under any circumstances. So he departed for the Silver Moon Forest toward the bandit camp, and soon about 3 wagons entered the village as their leader returned. The humans celebrated because they had succeeded in their conquest. They cheered because their chief was quite powerful. They had gained a lot from that raid with the hundreds of brothers in the camp. They wouldn't have to worry for the rest of the month. Suddenly, the chief looked to the side and saw a group of men carrying a chest, and they said it was a gift for their chief. A man appeared desperately to report that a black dragon was approaching. He had entered and was destroying everything around. The protagonists stormed the camp and attacked until everyone was running and screaming for help. It was the black dragon approaching. Despite that, they couldn't do anything because the dragon was flying too high, and they were bathed in his aerial attack. They could barely see with how much it hurt. Meanwhile, the protagonist was receiving notifications that he was gaining more and more points thanks to the battle. In the end, they won, and the kobolds celebrated the great victory. They told him there were many chests there. It must have been what had been stolen. They confiscated everything that was there, and the protagonist agreed it really was a great find. They should take it to the lair for now. Inside the boxes, they managed to store not just money, but fruits and various important potions and food that had been left behind. But what caught the dragon's attention was the transformation potion that was there. The low-level transformation potion was now in his hands. It allowed non-human beings to gain the ability to transform into their human form, inheriting 10% of their strength for 1 hour. With that, you could transform into a human again and return to Anna and the others in a more friendly form. He could even imagine them being impressed by his appearance. Selena might even apologize for her earlier rudeness. Still, if calculating his age according to dragon years, he'd end up being just a small boy, and that would be truly insane. Anyway, he decided to drink the potion. It would only last an hour, and he could just return to his normal form after the effects wore off. It didn't take long for him to gain his human form, but Porikuri was shocked because the dragon had suddenly taken human form. And the protagonist himself didn't know where his clothes had gone after ending up so exposed like that. The system asked him to wait. Due to the rapid transformation, the system was still loading the new information. It didn't take long before he was properly dressed. He was almost as handsome as in his past life, at least. He was worried about the differences between humans and dragons, and some things couldn't be done. But now everything was fine. 6 hours in his human form should be enough, and he asked Porikuri if everyone was equipped. The kobolds reported that once the chests were loaded, all the baggage would be ready. Now was enough. They could return to the lair, and as expected, the duration of the potion was quite useful. He could transform into a human and dragon as he pleased. Meanwhile, Selena was alone with Anna and felt it was the perfect moment to escape. Anna asked where she was going, and Selena stopped walking, commenting that she just intended to take a stroll. She laughed, asking where they should go. Their dragon hunt had failed. The mercenary group had been completely annihilated. Even the humblest support mage would have a higher place than her if she returned empty-handed like this. Still, Anna was too distracted by the little kobolds being born, not interested in running away at all. Selena asked if she wasn't afraid of all of the evil dragon who captured her, and Anna said that actually the dragon was quite kind. That truly surprised the mage. It didn't take long before the kobolds saw that the protagonist was back. Selena was shocked they returned so soon, and of course, the protagonist arrived happily to greet them. But when he realized the village was actually full of fainted kobolds and Selena was barely standing, struggling to stay awake. When he approached, he asked what happened, and she told him Anna had been captured by the spider monsters. She apologized because it was all her fault. She had failed to protect Anna while he was away, even though that was her only task. Selena thought he would see her as completely useless. Whether in the mercenary group or anywhere else, she always messed things up. But he replied that it was okay. It was his fault for not returning in time to protect the village. To his surprise, favorability with Selena increased by 50 points because of that, and she previously had minus 30, now she had 20 points. He successfully captured another NPC. Her favorability had reached the first stage requirement. With that, the protagonist obtained the ability Sage's Tears and was also rewarded with 2,000 system points. Then the dragon asked the system to exchange for primary modification and primary accumulation of dragon breath. The exchange was successful, and now he had spent his 2,000 system points. The modification would be quite powerful, so he had to protect his throat. Selena froze in shock when she saw the dragon coughing up blood out of nowhere, but he assured her he was fine. Then he ordered Porikuri to head for Itwin. After they dared to capture Anna, it seemed they clearly didn't want to live in this world anymore. In the depths of the Silver Forest, they followed the path where Porikuri guided them, saying this was the territory of the spiders raised by the monsters. The mine up ahead was their stolen lair, and the protagonist told them to hurry. They would attack the mine right now. They had no time to waste now, but before the protagonist could fly, he suddenly found himself trapped in a spider-filled web. When he couldn't move, he attacked with his fire, killing the giant spiders and earning 300 system points. Then, he invaded the mine and demanded to know where the half-human girl they had just kidnapped was. While moving forward, he took his human form and continued until he found Anna trapped in the spider's web. Even a bit confused, Anna smelled the dragon and recognized him. It didn't take long for him to free her from the web. She thanked him for saving her, thinking that he actually looked very good in his human form too. The protagonist laughed. After all, she was a very important person to him, and of course he would save her. Immediately, her favorability increased by 100 points. He was congratulated by the system for reaching the second stage of favorability and obtained the intermediate devourability. Special abilities could be directly solidified and were changing. He also received 3,000 more system points. Intermediate Devour allows not only the restoration of the body's condition, but devouring prey increases strength and promotes physical growth without being limited by age. He was thrilled because he had received many points. It was simply the result of sparing the lives of SS-ranked characters. They always promoted him generously. It seemed that increasing favorability was much more effective than defeating monsters to gain experience points. But in fact, he was surprised that she recognized him right away, and Anna laughed, saying it didn't matter what form he was in, she would always recognize him. Returning home, the protagonist pointed out the potions for Anna to drink and recover from her illness. It was a healing potion made from herbs, and she should always remember to drink it at the correct time. Quickly, the potions also helped increase her favorability points. In fact, the protagonist felt that the increase of just 1 point at a time was much slower than usual. Beside him, Selena became furious, questioning how he could make Anna keep drinking potions non-stop. They were for healing, not meant to replace meals like that. He ended up realizing that the mention of sugar was actually a good one, because maybe there were sweets among the spoils of war that were perfect for taking medicine. The protagonist went searching through the chests until he found one that looked very special. When he opened it, he was surprised because inside there was a girl tied up and restrained. He asked what exactly that was, and Selena immediately approached, questioning what he was doing and slapping him because he looked at the restrained girl with a perverted expression. Anna came over asking what happened to Selena, and she ran to cover Anna's eyes because children shouldn't see that kind of scene. Even so, both girls ended up seeing the one who was tied up inside the box, and he himself was confused. He ended up getting hit as if he had been the one who locked her in there. But if they didn't believe him, they could just ask the girl herself. When they removed what was preventing her from speaking, the girl screamed, cursing that the bandits had imprisoned her and demanded to be freed, furious. Anyway, Selena approached to calm the girl down, which only made the protagonist's favorability with Anna drop even more. He was saddened after being so unfairly treated and asked how exactly Porikuri explained things to them. Porikuri replied that he had only done what the protagonist ordered, loading the chests onto the cart and bringing them back. He never knew there was a person inside, so it wasn't his fault. And in parallel, at that moment, a grate will spread throughout the world. A notification arrived for the protagonist warning that a world mission would take place where a beginner village would be generated within 3 days for the arrival of the Chosen One. The protagonist asked Selena if she saw anything, and she grumbled that she only saw a damn dragon, which made him complain because that wasn't what he meant. But it didn't seem like she had seen the alert, so he asked the system what that meant regarding the arrival of a Chosen One. The system said that permission had been granted for the world with mortal destiny. That is, the game world would soon be realistically affected by the incomprehensible winter. This wager concerned the fate of this world. The result was that the protagonist heard about eliminating the players. He was surprised because apparently the players were supposed to be resurrected individuals from another world who would enter the game. He had never heard before of a world becoming a game in real life, and the system confirmed that the players actually came from the Water Blue Star. It was a world with a highly developed game industry, similar to his own homeland's world. The protagonist reflected on the idea of a parallel world. If that were the case, he didn't have to worry about them. They were part of his people anyway, but even so, it was impossible to eliminate the players because all of them could revive. The system said that players could be resurrected, but each time they were revived, the delay would double from the previous one. The first resurrection would take 5 seconds, the second 10, the third 20, and so on until their time limit ended. Still, the protagonist was surprised because with that calculation, in fewer than 23 resurrections, the respawn time would be 1 year. And even if the players were still persistent, they would only grow weaker with each resurrection after a year. They would witness their own deaths repeatedly, becoming increasingly frustrated with themselves. It was hard to say why he himself was facing this situation, and he asked if the NPCs in this world could also be resurrected, which shocked him. The rules were actually garbage. It wasn't fair at all. Players could revive forever, but NPCs had to risk their lives fighting. It wasn't a game, it was just an unfair invasion, and the system agreed that things could be understood that way. But as defenders, he had a stronger starting point than most players. The power scales were balanced. They were simply shaped differently. Besides, the losing side was destined to be destroyed. Hearing that left him surprised, and he asked the reason for that. Maybe it was because that fantasy world had been turned into a game from the beginning. And he asked if they had even asked for the consent of those inside the game. They were just playing with lives as if they were gods. Anna realized a little later that the protagonist had returned to his dragon form, and he was frustrated because he reverted too quickly, wasting the potions for nothing. She asked him not to be angry, as they had discovered what happened. It was the bandits who did it, and it wasn't his fault. The protagonist tried not to think she was avoiding the topic, but more than that, you couldn't understand why she was wearing clothes different from usual. Anna said her clothes were ruined and Selena found those outfits in a box and had to change. When he looked at Selena, he realized she had made both the other girl and herself change into something different. He never knew she had such strange tastes, and she replied that actually it was just a disguise after all. Only classification A? Not even that other girl had rank. The protagonist considered converting her into points in the system right away. In fact, when he stopped to look at her appearance, he ended up deciding to keep her as a pet because it seemed better. He really liked that, but it was kind of cheating, just making them change back into normal clothes at once. The more time passed, the more the protagonist felt this world might really be a kind of prepared game. Since fate allowed him to see that information, it suggested he should use it to fight the players. That being the case, he could no longer relax, and that's how all the monsters around him ended up swearing loyalty to him. It would be better to make a simple map and integrate them. Besides, he planned to check the things the system had for him and his abilities. Now you have the Variant Dragon Breath, Primeval Hunting, the Devouring Dragon's Power, Sage's Tears, which was a passive ability, and Experience Sharing. The 5-dimensional attributes could be improved through daily training or leveling up. Killing natives gave the protagonist no experience. He would have to kill players to gain more of that power. However, the players had no such restrictions, and since there were more natives, players naturally had many opportunities to level up. That was a resource with a good appearance. Manipulators on both sides wanted players and natives to fight to the death. The 5 dimensions could be improved through training. By all indications, this could indeed be a turning point. Then the dragon asked one of the kobolds to come closer. He did. The kobold named Huck came into his service. The protagonist checked the kobold's information but wasn't very surprised to see he was indeed so weak. He ordered the kobold to run around the cave for half an hour without stopping even once, or else he would eat him. This forced him to run for that half hour before stopping, and the protagonist was impressed because it actually wasn't bad at all. It seemed that training really could improve the 5-dimensional attributes, and just then, the girls returned after changing clothes. Shortly after, they prepared a map of the Silver Moon Forest. It was actually drawn by the previous kobold chief. Each of those monster communities had their own leaders, and the protagonist ordered Portakuri to gather all the kobolds. They could bring their things because he had something big for them to do, and later in Silver Moon, the leaders of the 3rd-level Fire Rabbit, Snake Chicken, and Boar were defeated. In fact, he reached the 3 leaders and told them to calm down. He didn't intend to eat them anyway, as he knew this world was facing a real crisis, which was why he told the leaders to unite. The Silver Moon Forest was their home, so they could take up arms to fight and drive the enemy away. The others ended up yielding under the dragon leader's orders, agreeing to work under his command and become one big family. He was surprised because that's how the sage's tears were used. It was almost like the speech of a true protagonist. Whatever a protagonist says, everyone would believe without hesitation. Suddenly, he almost felt like he was in a pyramid scheme. The rabbit leader asked the great dragon how they could fight the enemies, since after all, they were very weak monsters. And the dragon agreed. What they had to do next was something very specific. They would simply start training. The protagonist made all the monsters undergo very strict training to conquer the forest and defend their territory. They could only wait to see the results of these efforts. He certainly intended to win that bet and survive. At another moment, the humans ended up stopping in the city where they were shocked to look up and see that something had appeared. A giant hourglass appeared, as well as a news message announcing that the game's betting world was about to begin. One of the people called was Daniel A. Jason, and even he had no idea what was happening or what the term player was supposed to mean. But not only Daniel, Brenny and several others were sent to the game, where the system simply picked whoever it wanted. The first rule of the game was that players could not leave the game before death. After death, players would enter the world square to await resurrection. They were supposed to complete missions because that could guarantee invasion points. Points could be exchanged for items and daily necessities. They could also be used to buy resurrection time, so invasion points would always be exchangeable. The second rule of the game was that treasure chests would appear randomly in the game world. These chests had rewards such as invasion points, equipment, and other things. There were also war spoils. The rewards could be traded as well as they were collected. Another rule stated that the time for the first and second resurrection was 5 seconds. Each time to return would double, so they should value their lives and be careful. In the Silver Moon Forest, the protagonist received a report saying that the results of the monster training were remarkable. The gnolls and blackwater serpents near the forest had gathered under their command and were currently getting even stronger. He was quite satisfied until he was suddenly startled by a huge number of notifications about the generation of a beginner village. The first rule was for players who should descend to different areas of the world as beginners and settle into villages within 1 week for their own protection. Within the village during this period, anyone from the outside could be teleported inside. If it were a creature other than a player, it would be sent outside the village. Beginner Village number 1 of Sakura emerged on the Morgan Plains near the Silver Moon Forest. The protagonist ended up surprised as well when a large golden chest appeared, and he realized he was the treasure guardian. When he opened it, however, there was nothing inside. This treasure chest might have just been a means to distribute the rewards, but rewards could only be obtained when a player opened it. It was bad enough that he couldn't be human anymore after transmigrating there, and now he was being forced to guard a treasure chest. So he began speaking with the Grey Wolf leader, the Snake, and all the rest of those who had joined him. They should search for those chests in the forest and bring them all to him, and he ordered poor Kure to bring all the poison bombs and traps, and other things they, as kobolds, had made, and the protagonist asked the system if there was such a thing as a world map. The world map had been updated after the arrival of the players. Unlocking it required 10 system points. He unlocked it after seeing it was cheap, and he sighed because it really was an unfair war. Although players were weak at the start, they had the advantage in numbers, and now they had 7 extra days of absolutely safe development time. But based on his years of gaming experience, novice players had a fatal flaw. They were too curious. It didn't take long for all the chests to be gathered at once, and he ordered them all to be opened and distributed. They could place poison traps, bombs, and other toxic items separately, then hide the treasure chests in nearby bushes. They should hide them very well and not make it obvious. Horikuri asked why it was necessary to do that, and he replied that if their human friends came to visit, they should definitely be hospitable. And obviously, he would be guarding the real treasure chest this time, ready to do his job as a monster. Meanwhile, on the Morrigan Plains, the player Daniel Jason was doing his training and gained more available resources. There was the world map, the forum, team formation and sensory adjustment, the mission system, and many other things. But there was no button to leave the game. Everything was really real. There really was another world that had been turned into a game. At the same time, in the dragon's lair, Selena was practicing her magic, and the other girl, who was just there, kept thinking it was all her fault for running away with Blaze. That guy sold her to bandits to save his own life. She never wanted to see him again. Noticing the girl's fury, the protagonist felt that people from those days were all terrifying to that extent. He didn't even know how someone could have such a fierce look in their eyes. She hoped Anna would never become like them, and he even kept giving her medicine so she could recover soon. Anna always thanked him for the potions, and her affection points kept increasing. It wasn't long before he received a report that a hero had appeared in the strange barrier that had emerged. And the protagonist lets out an evil laugh. It seems someone could barely wait and was ready to explore that other world. Meanwhile, on the Morrigan Plains, the players could hardly believe how easy it was to level up. They even built a house upon reaching level 5. Killing a few small monsters for practice wouldn't hurt, but even so, leaving the starter village was kind of dangerous, and one of them said they should go back. Another player complained that they were bringing that coward because they cared too much about him. Otherwise, after 7 days, he wouldn't even survive on his own. He would be begging to go with them later, and they might not even agree. Another player agreed, saying as long as they had a piece of meat, he'd at least get the bone. The cowardly player pointed out that there was a chest nearby, and the other two got excited because they had found treasure quickly. But it turned out that all the chests they found only brought trouble, and they never understood why there was only garbage inside them. Eventually, all the players got separated, and one of them ended up dying to the protagonist simply from being startled. Killing a human player granted 10 system points. He was shocked that they were that weak, and it wasn't long before the cowardly player was found and taken as a hostage. The protagonist asked who he was and why they were invading his territory. The player replied that they were adventurers and it was their first time there. He trembled, saying they were just passing through the territory and didn't want to do anything to bother him. But the dragon himself didn't even know that, even though he had seen them using magic and attacking others just to get through his path. Then the player remembered he had the speed potion. The shop sold it and he could use it to escape from there. The player quickly bought the speed potion, spending 200 points, and the kobold pointed to the guy who suddenly ran away. The protagonist said he knew, but he could let him go. 7 days was enough time for the players to build. Meanwhile, one of the lost players was walking alone through the forest without knowing what any of this was. That's when he found his silver treasure chest and got pretty lucky because of it, but unfortunately, he lacked the key to open it. The system asked if he wanted to open it by spending 1,000 points to purchase it, and the player was surprised to hear that because it was way too expensive. In other games, killing the treasure guardian would drop a key, and that's when he spotted the 3rd level fire rabbit leader. It was just a rabbit, and certainly should be easy enough to handle. If he could get to it first and attack by surprise, he might win. He prepared to kill the little rabbit, but the player himself took a full punch from the rabbit. The giant rabbit asked if he was a smartass trying to steal the treasure chest, making the player retreat in fear. He was impressed, wondering how a 3rd level rabbit could be so strong. Something like that was far from scientific, and he didn't even know if he should call for help or anything like that, and the rabbit told him to open the chest, and he might consider sparing him. With nothing else to do, he decided to open the chest, and so he received the key by consuming 1,000 points to unlock it. But he never expected that opening the chest would make a bomb explode right in his face. Meanwhile, the humans were finishing building the houses. They managed to complete the houses and gained invasion points for that. They also built a tower that gave 1,000 points. Jason was finishing setting up the wall to protect the surroundings when he saw an adventurer running back. He asked what happened, and the cowardly adventurer tearfully said he saw a dragon and everyone should run away now. Jason asked where the dragon was, and the others laughed. After all, it must have just been an exaggerating kid, since this was a starter village. There was no way a dragon could be nearby. But the frightened adventurer pointed to the forest, saying it was true. One of the adventurers had been killed on the spot by it. He had only managed to escape after using a speed potion. Jason mentioned that if there really was a dragon, they wouldn't last very long there. They had to take the wood and stone used in the houses to create towers and walls to defend against the attack. The girl beside him even felt sad because she would lose the house she had just built. Meanwhile, Selena and the other girl were bored. The protagonist asked what was wrong with them, and Anna replied that Selena was sulking because her magic was failing. Evelyn, the other girl, wanted to kill someone, but caught the protagonist by surprise, and he wondered if someone could really say something like that with a smile. Anna must have truly been corrupted by evil to say those things with such innocence on her face. The protagonist receives notifications saying that one of his followers killed a player and he earned 10 system points. Soon Porikuri appears saying they collected all the treasure chests. There were various things inside when they opened them. Upon opening, they could find some things like a book and parts of items to forge new materials. But what caught the dragon's attention was the blueprint for a tower, something that would be of great interest to them. Apparently, it couldn't be used, and he wonders if only human players could use it, or if there were other conditions. Selena became interested in the ice skill book and approached the protagonist Sunayan, asking him to give her that magic book. Sunayan ended up agreeing, and Selena didn't understand why he kept looking at her with such a distracted expression. In any case, he would lend the book for a while, and even so, the protagonist noticed that his favorability with her had increased a bit. Later, Sunayan received a notification saying it had been detected that he was in a newly open area placing a blueprint. He could confirm the empty location to start building a tower using the blueprint he was carrying. As Sunayan expected, although that power couldn't be used inside his cave and near the tribe, he could still build outside. He saw only an empty simulation construction box reflected and had to concentrate to find a suitable spot to place it. Building a flaming arrow tower required 10 tons of stone, 3 tons of wood, 20 workers, 5 kilograms of food, and 12 hours of construction. The available worker races were humans with 20% increased construction efficiency, kobolds with 20% construction defense. There were also goblins with a 20% increased mutation rate in construction and dwarves with all construction attributes increased by 10%. The workers needed to be provided by the host. The construction would begin automatically once the workers entered the foundation. After construction was completed, the memories related to the workers would be erased, and they would be sent back. Seeing that, Sunayan wondered if he really had to provide the workers, and quickly realized when Porikuri showed up after climbing up there. He ordered the kobold to go down now and find 20 strong kobolds. He was building that flaming arrow tower right now. But when he noticed Porikuri had fainted, and Sunayan realized that maybe he had pushed himself harder than he should have. In fact, the day would continue as it was, and at night he noticed that Anna and the others should be resting. When he returned, he saw the girls sleeping deeply. Only Anna was whimpering, calling for her parents and telling the demons to go away. Sunayan wondered about those demons. If the monster encyclopedia wasn't wrong, the demons had been completely eradicated 1500 years ago. And he wondered how there could still be demons in those times, since in her past, she witnessed the death of her people during an attack. Even scared, a woman approached from behind and covered her mouth so she would stay quiet, and they could escape safely. The older sister hid Anna inside the wardrobe, asking her to stay there no matter what, and not come out at any cost. Later, however, that same sister ended up being attacked right before her eyes, and her power ended up awakening. The protagonist, meanwhile, wondered if all that was part of her nightmare and the illness that always made her sick. After all those days of herbs and potions, her health bar finally turned green after such a long time. But no matter what medicine was administered, Anna's remaining lifespan was stuck at 63 days with no sign of increase. Her status said she suffered from a severe illness and would die within 63 days. Sunayan wondered if it could be heart failure. Suddenly, Anna woke up. But at that very moment, she attacked the protagonist, who stepped back in surprise. At the same time, the other two girls woke up startled, not understanding why Sunayan was there in the middle of the night. The protagonist then said that, in fact, Anna was gone, and so the three of them flew out to look for her. It didn't take long before they saw the deepest part of the Silver Moon swamp, where Anna was fiercely fighting a monster. Her health bar was full, but it was red, and he was impressed that it was a level 2 stone-helmeted giant crocodile. The Swamp King was being beaten like a true worm. And just as Anna saw Sunayan, she fainted, and the dragon rushed to save her before she was swallowed by the crocodile. On the ground, they realized that Anna had really fainted, and Sunayan ended up being stealthily attacked from behind and had to face it quickly. That guy's skin was really thick. In the swamp, his dragon breath couldn't unleash its full power. So Sunayan told the system he wanted to modify for high-grade scale armor resistance, high-grade hardened claws and teeth, and an underwater breathable air sac. The system warned that the modification would cost 10,000 system points, and he didn't have enough points for it. He agreed, and the system took what he wanted after giving him a loan with an additional 50% interest. Sunayan got irritated because the system was too slow and decided to act anyway. The system warned that the modification could cause internal pain. Seeing that the protagonist had gone underwater, Selena ran to check if he was still alive down there, and she asked if she could just keep the ice skill book for herself, but right then Sunayan appeared, sending the crocodile flying away. With his new powers, he managed to kill the crocodile instantly, to the point that Selena even got interested in eating the burned meat. In the end, the three of them ate, and the system recognized that Sunayan had eaten a giant crocodile. His body was increasing its recovery speed. Soon Sunayan found a low-level magic attribute core. He was impressed to find it. He wondered if a monster could really condense such a magic core, and maybe that was why Anna had come so far out there. He also noticed that her health bar had dropped again to being low like at the beginning, and Sunayan asked the system if it knew what Anna's illness was. But since there was no response, he realized he really had to find out what disease afflicted Anna, and the reason why she had suddenly gone insane with such a giant power. And then he remembered hearing about priests. Sunayan asked Selena if she knew where to find a powerful priest, and she answered she wasn't sure, but had been traveling with a group of mercenaries. They only bought some potions and carried them around, so that kind of information was out of her reach. Then Evelyn said she knew where a priest lived, and it was inside the kingdom of Anrius itself. But if you planned to go into the city, he would end up being killed. After all, his bounty hunters were all over the city now. Sunayan understood that this made sense. But he still had 6 transformation vials, enough to maintain his human form for about half a day, and as long as he did it in time, there shouldn't be a problem. It seemed that whether human or monster, as long as they were male, they were all the same. At least, that's what Evelyn thought. She would abandon the other part without hesitation when facing difficulties in achieving her life goals. However, Sunayan asked why she was still standing there when she should be hurrying so they could go together. They all flew off, and he noticed shortly after that his favorability had increased. It must have been because of his magnificent battle feat. But only 300 points was too little. Sunayan always complained about the system constantly stealing his points. Just out of spite, the system took the 300 points to deduct from the loan. He still owed 9,000 points to settle. Sunayan had to hold back until he finished paying the debts of that other world. Life under capitalism wasn't easy at all. Outside the royal city of Anrius, the dragon arrived carrying Anna, and they were ready to continue their search. In the royal city of Anrius, where everyone revered the arrival of the great and brave Knight Blazer, it was actually quite impressive. They said Blaze single-handedly eliminated the group of bandits and even cut off the head of their leader, becoming very popular among the masses. They also heard he was heading to Lyria with the great mage Mason. Sunayan wondered if that group of bandits wasn't the one he himself had dealt with. It was surprising that Blaze was stealing credit for something he hadn't even done. He even claimed to have defeated a dragon. If Sunayan weren't busy with something else right now, he would have him beheaded just to show him what was good. Meanwhile, the protagonist continued toward the priest's house according to Evelyn's instructions. The priest's name was Rogue. He was in a wooden house west of the royal city, with a tree that had white flowers near it. Evelyn didn't intend to go with them to the city, so she just passed along the information for Sunayan to follow. He approached to knock on the door, asking if Rogue was there, and Sunayan grew worried when there was no answer. Maybe he was too old to hear. The protagonist simply kicks the door open to enter, and on the other side, Barbara, the intern, falls to the floor in shock. Stemaine apologizes, saying they were looking for Rogue, and Barbara quickly gets up saying it's all right. The compensation for the broken door would be 50 silver coins, which still made the protagonist laugh a little. She introduces herself as Barbara and asks if he wanted to see the professor. Sunayan replies that he wanted to find Rogue to begin a treatment. Then Barbara says that unfortunately the professor had gone on a trip because he failed to cure Prince Anlius's impotence. The protagonist asks if she knew where he went or when he intended to return, and she replies that she didn't really know about that. That's when Barbara noticed Anna and became enchanted, wanting to know if she was an ethereal being, impressed by how soft her ears were and how cute she looked. But Barbara could immediately tell that she was sick and dying. Sunayan was impressed and asked if she was also a priestess, and she laughed, responding that although she was an internal priestess, she could still treat diseases in a way. He asked if she could tell what was wrong with Anna. She had suddenly gone insane the night before and then fell into a coma. Barbara guided them to first lay her down on the treatment table, then she approached to start touching Anna. And Sunayan didn't understand if that was really how priests treated illnesses. Now he could understand why Anlius's condition hadn't been cured. Then Barbara found what she had been looking for and said that Anna had been afflicted by a brutal curse. The source of the curse was in her heart, and the other symptoms were just extensions of it. Moreover, that curse was extremely dominant. It would drain all the strength from the cursed person and, when triggered, make them go insane. Sunayan asks if once her body recovered a bit, she could end up going into a rage again, and that would make her drain all her life force. Barbara agrees because she could understand it that way, but unfortunately, she couldn't cure Anna in her current state. She could temporarily treat the symptoms, but Sunayan had to know that if she developed resistance to medications, her body would collapse. It would end up being like falling off a cliff, but there were 2 ways to break the curse. The first method was to end the curse by killing the person who cast it, and the second was to remove the injury by replacing the cursed heart. Preferably, they should use a dragon's heart, and Sunayan is shocked because Barbara figured it out so quickly. It almost seemed like she had a dog's nose to detect his true race even though he was hiding his appearance. The protagonist laughs, asking what was so important about a dragon's heart. After all, it was a complicated material to find. Maybe there was another treatment method. At that moment, Barbara mentions that unless he finds the legendary Great Spiritual Spring and bathes in it, that should be able to delay the curse. But the Great Spiritual Spring had dried up, or he could go to the Winter Empire on the northern continent, where high-ranking priests could perform a purification ritual. But Barbara feared that Anna wouldn't have enough time to get there. That's when she remembered something. He could find the witches. They always had all kinds of strange and wonderful ways to treat patients, but their whereabouts were usually hard to determine. She only knew that they had appeared in Ulster in the past. The protagonist asked about that because it was the first time he heard of it, not knowing if something like that could even work. And he suggests that Barbara could use healing magic to help her recover first, and then they could talk about the rest later. Barbara agrees, asking him to wait a moment, then turns around while Sunayan asks what she was looking for. She comes back showing that it was a beginner's guide to basic healing and says you can relax because everyone has a first time. There's no need to be too nervous. Even so, Sunayan doesn't understand why she kept saying those things as if reminding herself of them. Then Barbara uses magic on Anna and she wakes up. Sunayan was relieved to see that she seemed okay, and Anna asks where they were. He tells her they were in the city of Amlius. She had fainted suddenly, so he brought her to see a doctor. Barbara laughs when she realizes she was right when she guessed he was a dragon, and that the girl might be the one who had been kidnapped a few days ago by the Black Dragon. Sunayan questions what the problem with that was, and Barbara says he didn't need to worry because she didn't intend to report him. As she was a priestess, she would accept anyone who needed healing. Currently, she was researching external healing magic. Heart transplants could be performed even without magic, and she even showed up with a wound on her hand while suggesting the idea. She even offered a 20% discount that he could consider. Sunayan became concerned because it seemed very much like modern surgery, and he replied that there was no need. Maybe he could find another way to solve this while still helping the patient in need. Anna didn't understand anything about the heart transplant, but Sunayan took her outside while Barbara remained busy with herself. Even so, he was a bit shocked because she wanted to do surgery while still reading the book for basic healing spells. Outside the royal city of Anrius, the protagonist accompanied Anna, asking what the problem was. Maybe she was still uncomfortable in some other way. Anna asked if the illness she had was incurable, and Sunayan replied that it was just a curse. In the name of the dragon, he swore he would make her better as soon as possible, and she was moved because Sunayan made an oath for her. And Anna reminded him that he should never promise to save her at the cost of his own life, and he replied that he understood, even though there was no need to worry because he would find a way to end the curse. That's when Sunayan suddenly received a notification from an NPC. A female NPC had sent him a summoning invitation, and the system asked how he would like to respond to it. Meanwhile, inside the National Temple, the said NPC was performing a blessing ritual for the great goddess. Despite that, Sunayan received no further responses. Although they would like to take a look, there were more urgent matters to attend to. Outside the dragon's nest at the Flaming Arrow construction site, the kobold tribe had gathered after finding Sunayan. They reported that the tower was almost complete. He acknowledged that the efficiency wasn't bad at all after all. Goblins were true geniuses when it came to construction. It seemed that 4 more towers could be added to the schedule. The protagonist could see through the system the details of the first-level towers. They could receive upgrades with many points to be added. It was fully automatic, just 1 arrow every 10 seconds. It was very slow, so they could first test the power of the Flaming Arrow Tower. Sunayan ordered Porticurry to aim at the stone wall, and they fired a flame arrow to test its capabilities. Sunayan was impressed because the attack caused great destruction. A flame arrow had done that much damage. He asked if this wasn't some kind of simplified version of magic. No wonder the attack speed was so slow with such high critical hits. Since construction workers were different, the results would also be different. Sunayan wondered if there would be a similar effect with different monsters operating it, and so Sunayan ordered Porticurry to fetch 20 of those fire rabbits. He wanted to perform an experiment and also asked the rabbit leader for him and his fire rabbits to enter and try it out. Now Sunayan felt that things were going well. It seemed that the tower's attacks could change according to the creature using it and their summon abilities. But these towers defending the dragon's lair wasn't a problem. It was just that the range and attack speed needed to be improved. He asked the system what was needed to upgrade the Flaming Arrow Tower, and the system replied that upgrading the Flaming Arrow Tower required 10 magic beast cores. They were fire-type beasts of the 3rd tier. This was a low-grade magic core obtained by defeating the stone-armored crocodile in the Silver Moon swamp near the mountains. It seemed it was difficult to find that many 3rd-tier magic beasts in the Silver Moon forest. Only the mountains might have them. Sunayan would need to check the Silver Moon Mountains. And soon Anna showed up saying Evelyn and Selena were fighting. The protagonist could only imagine what kind of fight they were having, and it was almost funny to think about it. Anna asked him to stop daydreaming. If he didn't stop them, the dragon's lair would end up destroyed. Sunayan had completely forgotten that both of them were powerful mages, and quickly ran off to try and make them stop fighting, saying if they wanted to do that, they should go outside. Since they wouldn't stop, Sunayan transformed into a dragon to push the two apart, and Anna mentioned they were fighting over the Ice Mage's skills. Selena wasn't able to learn it, but Evelyn did just by watching it once, so they quickly started fighting. Sunayan says it was indeed inappropriate to fight over such a small matter, and that in his territory they should only follow his rules. If it happens again, he says they should at least fight hand-to-hand without using magic, but neither of them was in the mood for games. Alone, Selena was furious because she was frustrated, not understanding why she couldn't learn something like that, and she didn't want to feel useless. She kept attacking so much that a piece even flew and hit Sunayan on the head, and he complains when Selena mentions that he himself told her to go out and fight. He says it was just a silly fight. There was no reason to get so angry to the point of running out in the middle of the night punching trees. She could have at least let others sleep. Selena confesses that she was feeling useless, and Sunayan replies that if none of the usual paths worked, she could try one no one had taken before. This left her confused, and he comments that considering how aggressive she was, he thought dark magic might suit her. Selena says dark magic has been considered heretical in the wizarding world. It certainly wasn't for her. And the protagonist sighs because she actually looked quite like a heretic, but even so, Selena thanks him because he went after her and cared. He gained 50 more favorability points with her, and time passes in the Silver Moon Forest in the intermediate layer, where a group of hidden girls sees from afar large, chubby fire rabbits that catch their attention. They wanted to eat them, they could bet their meat was juicy, and the big gold chain around their necks was something they'd also wanted. Even so, they never knew such big fire rabbits could exist in that forest to begin with. Those rabbits usually didn't eat and drink so well, and they were even wearing collars like that. Anyway, no matter how weird they were, they couldn't defeat the bird demon race. They had heard there was a dragon in this forest. Everyone should be careful. She would count to 3 and then they would all attack together. But just as they all lunged at the rabbits, believing they could successfully attack them, they stopped immediately. The rabbits revealed they were actually super powerful, and the girls were badly beaten by each of their attacks. They couldn't defeat them, and it didn't take long for the 3 to be caught and sent to the dragon's lair. Sunayan asked if they were the ones who attacked his familiars, and they said they didn't mean to offend him, they were just starving. A few days ago, a band of hawk eagles came from the other side of the Silver Moon Forest and stole the nests in the Silver Moon Mountains. They stole food, stoned sheep, and even killed people from their tribe, and Sunayan became curious about this. It seemed there was another novice village on the other side of the Silver Moon Forest, and they begged him to help reclaim their home and rescue their people. Hana, the chief of the bird demons, swore she would gladly offer her life and her tribes to serve the great dragon, along with their stone sheep. Now, Sunayan could understand their motivations, but he asks why they chose to target the fire rabbits specifically. Hana was the leader of the bird demons at level 17. She had some special abilities like flying and a sweet singing voice. Also, the personality of the old Six was very suitable for reconnaissance, and her voice could be used to confuse players. Then Sunayan marks her forehead and accepts her request, making her and her tribe part of his people now. Anna, seeing that the protagonist intended to go to the Silver Moon, says they all wanted to follow him too. He refuses because they weren't going for a stroll, but to fight, and Anna says she could help anyway. Selena and Evelyn agreed because they could do the same, and Sumayan wonders if they all became like this after what happened. He tells the others that if someone enters the forest while he is away, they should proceed as usual and could place the box where it could be accessed. They all fly to where the demon's nest was, and Hannah says the beasts inside were very fierce and cunning, so we should be careful. The protagonist was beginning to regret bringing Anna along, but he smelled a strong scent of blood there. It was dangerous inside, so Sunayan tells Anna to wait for him outside in the meantime. Hana should stay there with Anna to protect her, and Sunayan enters the cave where he found several level 28 hawk beasts inside. He could hardly believe so many third-level magical beasts existed there in the Silver Forest. No wonder the bird demons had been driven into a cave. Even though their strength was below Sunayan's, he couldn't handle their numbers. Maybe he should bring more people next time. But before he could return, the beasts noticed Sunayan and charged at him. Unable to escape, he decided to focus on fighting. After killing the creatures, the system congratulated him for obtaining 23 fire magic cores and 345 system points. It seemed that the magical beasts had already condensed their magic cores inside them, which could be quite useful. That's when Sunayan realized there was still one beast alive. It was a mutant hawk demon, due to its large size. Although its speed was hindered by its size, in terms of power, it could be said it was tough to bring down. The two began fighting, and Sunayan ended up injured. As expected, it was really quite fast. He heard Anna shouting for him to be careful, and Sunayan had his wings hit, falling before he could return to battle. Anna was worried about the protagonist and asked Hana to check what had happened, and they approached Sunayan. Anna ran to see if Sunayan was okay and why he was bleeding so much. She even cried, hoping he wouldn't die. Sunayan quickly got up, asking her not to cry because he was still fine, but Anna was worried because he was bleeding too much. He was fine, just a bit hungry. He would be okay soon after quickly feeding. Suddenly, Sunayan received a black core. It was good he swallowed hard, as it allowed him to gain more resistance and defeat the hawk beast. But it was right then that Anna was suddenly grabbed and kidnapped by one of the hawks. Sunayan attacked and she ended up falling after being released. Anna plummeted from a great height and felt relieved because she survived by falling into the water. The spring water was nice. If only Sunayan were there, he could have seen it. Then suddenly, the center of the water started to glow and she asked who was there. A figure emerged from the water, mentioning it was relieved that someone had finally found that place. Anna asked who it was, and the woman said she was the guardian of the great spiritual spring. She could see what was inside her. It seemed there was something restricting the flow of her power. Anna approached surprised because the girl looked like her sister, to which the guardian said she wasn't her sister. She had only taken that form because that's how she remembered her. The guardian told her to forget the pain and kissed Anna. And then a change happened and she ended up at the bottom of the spring, finding several treasures there. A bit later, Sunayan appeared looking for Anna and she waved to let him know where she was. When he descended, he was caught by surprise because suddenly Anna had an enormous spiritual power. And not only did it suppress all the negative buffs, but also awaken many other talents, and he asked if she was okay after what had just happened. Anna agreed, mentioning that she had just met her sister, which made Sunayan curious to know if he could see his future sister-in-law. She asked if he was worried and Sunayan agreed, which only caused her favorability with him to increase by 50 points. Now Sunayan had gained more system points for advancing in favorability, and he could unlock the advanced devouring power. Moreover, devouring different substances could provide different enhancements, like devouring iron ore would strengthen the iron content within the host's scales. He used the 5,000 points he got to try to pay off his debts, even though he still had a bit left. Sunayan smiled, asking the system if it couldn't just clear his debt, and the system replied that it was against the rules. The protagonist asked if they could really talk about rules when he himself existed in that world. If the players knew the truth, they'd be shocked. Since the system itself had stolen a bit, they could just bend the rules one more time and it shouldn't be a problem. The system then mentioned that based on the provided transformation direction, it would divide the host's transformation plan into several phases, with each phase requiring a portion of the transformation fee, and Sunayan realized it was nothing more than an installment plan. At least it was much better than the extremely expensive transformation loans he used to rely on. Apparently, they could negotiate like that without worry, but the system warned that he could only use what he bought after clearing the debt. Sunayan laughed, thinking the system was still too young to argue with him, and that's when Anna caught the protagonist's attention because there were many treasures nearby. When he opened one of the chests, he froze upon seeing several bones and wondered what exactly that was supposed to be. Then Sunayan asked her not to open the boxes yet, even though there were purple water attribute magic books inside them. Anna hadn't really heard what he said, and Sunayan sighed, letting her continue to see what was inside the chests. At least it was a stroke of great luck. Anna was doing so well opening the chests that she almost seemed like a true protagonist. Anna pointed out the number of things she found inside the chests, and Sunayan wasn't even sure if he should stay that confident. He had risked his life to obtain all that, and she just went on opening all the boxes. It kind of felt like a waste. The protagonist even ended up being teased by the system, which quickly corrected itself, saying he was the best of all just to avoid provoking his anger. Sunayan couldn't believe it when he saw the system always selling female products in the shops. And the system defended itself, saying it thought its suggestion was excellent. Releasing loans wasn't impossible. After that discussion, suddenly Hana appeared thanking Sunayan because her people had been rescued and were able to return to the dragon's lair. He understood the situation and told her to go back first. He and Anna would return a bit later. Meanwhile, in the human village, the cowardly adventurers said that there really were dragons in the Silver Moon Forest. But everyone laughed at him because he couldn't even see any of it. They barely saw rabbits. He probably got scared by the shadow of trees. Everyone kept laughing at him even after demolishing some houses to build a low tower that shot arrows. Even so, the cowardly adventurer was worried because things could go badly, and Jason interrupted. He suggested the matter needed more investigation. He would take some people to investigate the entire Silver Forest. The cowardly adventurer was furious because everyone laughed and doubted him, and if they were acting like that, they might as well go ahead and die. Back at the lair, Sunayan checked his new advanced devouring skill, which could promote physical growth even with age. He was impressed by that ability to evolve by eating other things. He thought that if devouring iron ore was complicated, swallowing rocks might be useful. Still, eating minerals was bad and tasteless, but the system verified that he had eaten some rocks and increased the strength of his shelling by 0.1%. But what really caught his attention was that while his hardness increased, as a consequence, his speed decreased. It seemed he couldn't just go around eating anything after all. Sunayan would have to try eating other things and see what worked best. He ate gold and increased the strength of his scales and resistance to fire. Eating silver increased scale strength and resistance to poison. Devouring a mountain wolf increased all attributes when hungry, but in the end Sunayan only slightly raised his stats. He even ended up biting his own tongue by accident, and the system reported that devouring black dragon meat increased the purity of the Canistio du Lepata Quaterus gene. That new term made Sunayan curious to know whether it was some kind of ancient dragon gene or maybe a blood relative of his. If it was a male dragon, it might be his great-great-grandfather, and if it was female, his great-great-grandmother, and so he continued doing a few more tests. It seemed that devouring minerals like gold and silver could increase scale resistance. Silver offered poison resistance and gold fire resistance. There was a mine near the dragon's nest worked by kobolds, but getting gold would be more complicated. After defeating the king of a certain country, walking through the human world shouldn't be so hard anymore. Suddenly, Anna appeared showing that she found several interesting things and they were all pretty cool. That lucky character setting was a bit much, and it didn't take long before they returned to the dragon's lair. Porikuri reported that they had been silently observing the hero's movements in the forest these past few days, placing new items into the open treasure chests. The protagonist praised him but hoped the items placed in the chests were truly valuable after all. And he replied there was no need to worry, they were just some cooked stuffed intestines. Those guys seemed really happy to get them. Sunayan hadn't expected Porikuri to be so weird as to exchange treasures for stuffed intestines. Then Hana suddenly appeared to report that she had found silver and Sunayan felt relieved. It seemed the players couldn't wait any longer and were ready to bite the bait. He ordered Porikuri and the fire rabbits to take the soldiers to the flaming arrow tower to attack. The blackwater serpents, chicken snake beasts could prepare an ambush trap, and everyone began to prepare for the great battle. In the Silver Moon Forest, the humans kept complaining because there weren't even monsters or any other animals inside. Still, Jason said to be careful because when something seemed too good to be true, it might be a trap. But the girl didn't even believe anything could happen. They were just unintelligent monsters. They couldn't even set traps. But it didn't take long before the players started getting picked off by the monsters one by one, and each of them began to be killed. The players were attacked by the monsters, and Jason was shocked because for some reason the jackals, which were supposed to be common, were hard to deal with. He managed to kill some monsters and level up, but it was still difficult, and he shouted for everyone to run. Jason made his way to the outer gorge of the dragon's nest and told everyone not to stop because it seemed they were no longer being chased. The monsters weren't trying to fight. It was more like they were driving them all away, and he wondered if there could be something worse ahead. One of the players pointed out and asked what those things growing on the cliff wall were that looked like giant bamboo shoots. A character used appraisal to check what it was, and Jason found it strange because it seemed out of the ordinary. Suddenly, they realized that what was hidden above were flaming arrow towers, and everyone froze in shock that something like that was there. It meant there had to be a human lord in that forest, but that should be impossible since this was monster territory. With priests and mages protecting them, they shouldn't have anything to fear. But just then, an arrow flew past his face and the player froze. Still, he let it go. It was just as he expected. The arrows were even worse. Besides being thick, they had no advantage. But when they least expected it, the arrow opened and released poisonous gas. Jason warned everyone to cover their mouths and noses for protection. That's when several flaming arrows flew at everyone and they ran off desperately, which made Sunayan laugh. He was pleased because he had used and upgraded the flaming arrow towers, increasing their range and power, also improving the arrow types. Anna asked if he needed her help because she had just learned to use the water and light sphere to attack too. And the protagonist refused, still a bit shocked because she had come all the way there when she should be in the cave with Evelyn and Selena where it was safer. Jason told everyone not to panic. The mages could stack shields and the priests should start healing. The plan was working. As long as they weren't directly hit, they could hold out longer. Suddenly, everyone pointed to the sky and saw the black dragon flying above, shocked that it actually existed. Sunayan greeted them because they had entered his territory despite being humble insects, and Jason froze from the aura of the evil dragon. He was in disbelief that the dragon was real. The coward from before hadn't been lying after all. Still, Jason calmed down because it was only a young dragon, and this time he was leading the novice village's assault team. If they could defeat the black dragon, if they managed to defeat this black dragon now, he could become the best player in the entire world. Sunayan called them scum and prepared to kill them all, and Jason shouted for everyone to stay alert because they were under attack and needed to dodge. The protagonist used his fire magic and the humans managed to defend themselves. Jason said this was their chance. The dragon's altitude was at its lowest level, and he used his breath attack. The dragon was enraged. If they wanted to live, they had to follow his commands, and all the mages could concentrate their attacks in scattered areas. They could cover the warrior players while they flanked from the rear. Jason used the system to drink a strength and speed potion. Everyone began attacking Sunayan, but he couldn't understand what was going on because they were all too weak, so he decided to just finish everyone off without thinking too much. Jason rushed at the protagonist to try and kill him, but suddenly a great light made the players turn away with their eyes hurting. When he looked back, Sunayan saw that Jason had been trapped. It was Anna, Selena, and Hana who had come to help. The players realized they had failed. They couldn't fight against all of this. They would have to run now. Sunayan laughed because they were all trying to escape thinking it would be that easy, and everyone ran while being chased by the kobolds. Only a small number of players reached the plains safely, including Jason, who fooled with the other girls. But he couldn't understand why everything was so dark. It was Sunayan's shadow appearing above and shooting fire at them. Successfully, the protagonist won the battle against the players and gained 2,000 points in the system. It was 5 system points per player death. A total of 5,000 points were obtained from all their deaths. Back at the dragon's lair, Porikuri was emotional because they had managed to win, but they reported that they had even captured someone. The captive was none other than Jason, and they asked how they should deal with him. Tsunaya knew that was the guy who tried to set up an ambush against him. He ordered them to break his arms and legs and imprison him for now, which left Jason desperate and writhing. That's when Tsunaya started feeling strange, about to faint for some reason, and upon checking the system, he ended up fainting, leaving everyone worried. Back in the dragon's lair, Anna asked the dragon not to scare her like that by suddenly fainting. Selena asked if maybe he had been hurt or something until she realized that Anna was letting the dragon lie on her lap. She said that according to elf legends, lap pillow therapy was quite effective. Last time, that's how Tsunaya managed to awaken. That's how the three girls decided to do the same thing as Anna, and Porikuri reflected on how his boss had suddenly passed out without warning. He was radiating glory from his body. It could be a blinding glory, something recorded in the ancestral teachings. It was a true breakthrough of the dragon, but all the girls were confused by the new term they had heard. Anna reminded them not to disturb Tsunaya's rest, and right when the girls left, the protagonist gestured for the kobold to come closer. Porikuri got excited, hoping that maybe his boss was going to ask him to serve by his side, but Tsunaya murmured for him to leave or he would eat him. The kobold got scared and confused by that, simply running off while saying he suddenly remembered something he was told to do. He was supposed to go lead the kobolds in setting a trap around the village and everything else. He would leave them right there. Tsunaya then told Anna that a dragon's breakthrough could be quite dangerous. There was a chance he wouldn't wake up, which left her very worried to hear, but he licked her face, saying it was a stage that all dragons had to go through. They would gain knowledge and become stronger during sleep. Tsunaya told her not to worry, but ended up collapsing and falling asleep anyway. Anna promised she would wait for him to wake up and would protect him while he was like that. Time passed, and we returned to the human village. Inside a house, a girl was very happy to receive the invasion points, though annoyed because there were spam messages in the game. Suddenly, someone opened her door saying they were from the king's army and were there to kill the black dragon. He wanted to spend the night there, and that's when the player received a notification that the world storyline NPC Mason had entered the novice village she commanded. She could choose between three options. The first was to kill the NPC Masanti and take his place to complete the important world quest. After completing the quest, she would receive a huge amount of points. The second option was to help the NPC Masanti. After completing the important world quest, she would receive invasion points based on her contribution, and she could choose the third option, which was to not participate in the quest at all. Seeing this, she realized it was related to killing dragons, and there was an NPC Masant. Maybe the spam message was actually true after all. In that case, she got up to speak to Masanti and introduce herself as the village chief, welcoming him on his arrival. Meanwhile, Blaze was in his room spending time alone when suddenly a girl came running and asking the knight for help. Blaze was immediately enchanted because she was a beautiful girl who must have been discussing magical principles with Master Masanti. She agreed, but Masanti had started getting twitchy hands and suddenly tried to kill her. So the village chief ran off in that state to ask Blaze for help. He was shocked that an old man like that tried to put his hands on such a beautiful girl. She used her charm to ask Blaze for help, and right away he decided to do what she said. He would not allow the man to touch her and would kill him. Suddenly, Blaze kicked the door open, and the mage Masanti was startled, questioning what it was that he was trying to do. Blaze said that violating a woman in the Anlius Kingdom was a capital offense, but the mage was confused about what he meant by that. But Blaze made him shut up by kicking him away, stating that he should know exactly what he had done. Mesan said that if he was courting death, he couldn't be blamed for what would happen, and he prepared a major spell against him. For some reason, his spell wasn't working, and Blaze laughed because he hadn't expected him to be that weak. Still, Masana mentioned that he should remember he was there to kill the dragon at the request of the king himself. At that moment, the girl from before appeared asking how they could kill the dragon. They didn't need Masanti, she and Blaze could handle it. Right away, Masant pointed at the girl, saying she was a completely useless mage, couldn't even cast a simple spell, just an ordinary woman. She laughed, asking if he liked the calming tea she added that night. She put something special in the drink, and he realized too late that she had put something strange in his drink. He got so furious that he lunged at her to kill her. But Blaze hit him and stopped him, saying he wouldn't allow her, the girl named Melinda, to be insulted like that. Melinda took advantage to throw herself into Blaze's arms, begging him to save her because Masanti intended to kill her. And that's how Melinda manipulated the knight to have the mage killed so she could get what she wanted. Meanwhile, Tsunaya heard from Hana about something happening. It was a human army suddenly attacking. But before that happened, Tsunaya had fallen into a deep sleep and entered the dream realm where he would undergo his evolution. He encountered another red dragon who was gigantic, which made him wonder if it was his predecessor. The red dragon said he would grant him a unique inheritance to survive and drive the players out of his homeland. Now everything would be fine and he should leave the realm now. But Tsunaya asked him to wait because he had something he wanted to ask. The ancestor completely ignored him and kicked him back to reality, and Tsunaya thought that the people he mentioned earlier must have been the human players. Tsunaya intended to drive each one of them out even if his predecessor hadn't said it. He went to the Silver Moon Forest. Still, He didn't see anyone and wondered where Anna and the others had gone. Maybe he was still sleeping and didn't realize it. In truth, he felt his ancestor was really eccentric. He just pulled him into the dream and left without explaining anything after saying a bunch of stuff. He didn't even say what was inside the purple crystal he gave, so Sunayan just broke it and inherited 100 years of dragon memory. The special inheritance was obtained, including the magic of dragon language, all to increase the morale of subordinates through a thunderous roar. This ability would grant subordinates an increase in general capacity and make them fearless for a period of time with no side effects. He could also use the secret language, revealing all life and terrain around through a low whisper. No disguise could escape. Suddenly, Sunayan saw Anna, who was dressed in a totally different way than usual, and she approached saying she had been practicing dragon language magic. Sunayan liked that, and Anna reminded him that they had an agreement. If he didn't learn, he wouldn't be allowed to leave. Although Sunayan was imagining one thing, the reality was completely different, and Anna summoned several swords to be in training. He asked her to wait because he wasn't ready. That wasn't how he imagined training would be. Sunayan even tried to call the system, and the system didn't respond, which made him wonder if he was still dreaming. Meanwhile, the monster leaders and most of their people were not inside the dragon's lair now. Only Hana and the others were there. Even half of the flame rabbits were gone. With Sunayan still sleeping, Selena wondered what she should do with the army attacking. Anna wondered what she would do if she were Sunayan, and that's when she decided to embody Sunayan and give orders to Hana. She said to immediately send two bird demons to find the leader of the Nulls, Rayman, and tell him the dragon's lair was under attack and needed reinforcements. And they should notify the others to grab the flame rabbits and quickly enter the flaming arrow tower to prepare the defenses. Additionally, they should have everyone retreat into the surrounding forests along the road and begin taking care of them. They wanted to avoid direct contact as much as possible, which left all the others impressed because Anna took the lead to give orders. Meanwhile, Melinda was in the middle of the human army when she saw some of them being attacked on the way. She quickly saw that they were being ambushed from the trees. The monsters like to aim for the head, and therefore they should protect themselves. Blaze attacked and realized they were being attacked from the rear as well. Melinda had inherited the power of the Archmage and her agility had increased greatly. If she killed the dragon, she could gain all its power for herself and thus become much stronger. Melinda's powers impressed Blaze. He didn't know her magic could be that powerful. She responded that they should just keep setting fire to any tree that could be hiding monsters so they could hurry. Outside the Dragon's Valley, a group of humans kept moving forward. Melinda pointed out that the lair was very close and they had to approach. Blaze was worried about her and came closer to protect her, while Melinda thought he was a big fool. She had underestimated the monsters, but in the end they really had firearms. If they kept fighting like this, her army would be wiped out. She wondered if she could kill the dragon then, and Melinda thanked Blaze because he would cover her from the attacks. She gained momentum and rose up to attack with a flame explosion the arrow tower that had fired at them. Anna noticed that the army had attacked quickly, and she hoped Sunayan would wake up soon because they needed him. She kept begging for that, and inside his dreams, the protagonist realized he could hear Anna's voice. It must be in danger. Meanwhile, Dream Anna praised Sunayan for learning to use magical weapons quickly. He could keep up the good work. But he wanted to get out of there quickly and asked if she knew the way, to which Anna told him not to be in such a hurry. He had promised Hana he wouldn't leave before completing the test, but soon Sunayan flew off far away. He didn't intend to stay there until finishing the test, and he was going to leave as quickly as possible, when Anna caught up saying he would have to defeat her to leave first. Meanwhile, the battle between the players and the monsters continued. They were desperate to enter the lair and kill the dragon. Melinda found it strange they had come so far, but Sunayan hadn't appeared yet, and she wondered if he had fled. She took the opportunity to enter the lair and found the great black dragon, surprised because he was really big. He should only be a juvenile dragon, only around level 20, and Melinda used her magic to assess the dragon. But suddenly a great explosion sent her flying, and she asked who had suddenly done that to her. The one there to protect Sunayan was Anna, who ordered her to leave the dragon's lair immediately. The other players were surprised because there was a beautiful woman there, and Melinda laughed because she was such a cute girl, and asked if she really thought she could fight her using only those water balls and light spells. The other girls were worried as Melinda prepared to attack, commenting that she was overestimating herself. Anna and the others were attacked, and Melinda ordered everyone to kill the dragon first. Anna couldn't escape, and if they did that, all the girls would be theirs. Anna apologized to Sunayan because she couldn't protect him in time. Meanwhile, Sunayan was arguing with Dream Anna and wanted to know how he could get out of there. She said that if they didn't leave, the demon's seal would break, and if that happened, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Sunayan knew that and told her to hurry up. This uncomfortable feeling was only getting stronger, and he hoped everyone was okay. Anna smiled, saying that if he wanted to know the way out, he just had to come closer, and Sunayan even moved in to kiss her, wondering if that would wake him up. But Anna slapped the dragon, and he really woke up, feeling pain on his face. He had been awakened by a rather strong hit. Looking to the side, the protagonist realized that the soldiers were inside the dragon's lair now, and he sent all of them flying away, while Anna turned around, relieved to see that Sunayan was now awake. She apologized because she couldn't protect the lair well enough alone, but Sunayan assured her she did very well in his absence. The other girls also cry because he finally woke up and the protagonist realized he really should take revenge for what had happened. This caused his favorability with Evelyn and Selena to increase by another 50 points, and Selena pointed toward Melinda. She says that the wicked woman Yuna electrocuted them, and now their clothes are completely ruined. Sunayan realizes that the girl was actually a very skilled mage player, and Melinda freezes in surprise. It should have been impossible for him to awaken while in a deep sleep, and he didn't believe it when he saw him wake up so quickly. Following the time the message was sent, it should have taken at least another week for him to wake up. Melinda was definitely furious that Sunayan woke up so early, but he himself kept wondering how she even knew he was asleep. The other warriors got angry and fought among themselves until Sunayan made them all run away thinking he had gone mad. While they were fighting, Blaze appeared telling Melinda to flee with him. Now that the dragon had awakened, they could defeat it. Melinda refuses. She wouldn't miss such a good opportunity after all. Even if she failed, she would resurrect. Evelyn becomes enraged upon seeing the scum Blaze, who abandoned her and sold her to the bandits before she could be found by Sunayan. Melinda uses an ice shock spell against them, and Anna shouts for the protagonist to be careful. Sunayan turns after feeling the weak attack and asks if it was Melinda who did it, but she didn't stop her attacks. She kept casting fire spells this time, but none of her spells work, and she questioned why. She wonders if after advancing once, Sunayan's resistance had increased to such a level, she didn't even know how they could defeat him. The protagonist fires an attack, but instead of killing her, Sunayan decides to restrain Melinda because he intended to make her suffer for what she had done. All because she touched his people, Melinda was relieved that at least the game had those mechanics. She could take her own life and be reborn. But Sunayan uses his ability to make her drop her weapon, thinking about dying wouldn't be that easy. When Sunayan was alone with Melinda, Anna appeared to tell him that Evelyn was gone, but he wasn't worried. After all, with her magic, common soldiers couldn't do anything to her. Meanwhile, Blaze was fleeing alone through the Silver Moon Forest. He was being attacked by Evelyn, furious because he was always a coward who ran at the first sign of trouble. Blaze fell to the ground after being attacked, complaining about the pain and asking if he even knew Evelyn. That only made her even angrier because he had really forgotten her to that extent. That's when he finally remembered. Blaze thought she had been taken by the bandits and now realized that Evelyn had been captured by the Black Dragon. He even had the nerve to suggest that she follow him and shouldn't worry because he wouldn't dislike her or anything like that. Furious, the girl gestures for him to come closer then, and Blaze gets all happy thinking he was going to get a kiss, only to get punched in the face. Blaze gets angry because she dared to hit him, so she shouldn't blame him for what would happen, and he uses a potion to throw at her. Evelyn realizes her magic was suppressed and asks what he suddenly sprayed on her. Blaze laughs at that. He didn't expect the things he stole from Melinda to be that useful, and then he points his sword at her neck. The girl says that her sister was a professor at the Amlius Magic Academy. If he killed her, he could be hunted by the academy. That couldn't matter less to him if her sister asked. He'd just say the Black Dragon got tired of playing with her and ate her. And that's how he finished off Evelyn. Meanwhile, outside the dragon's lair, Sunayan went after all the others who were running trying to escape. He uses his abilities to paralyze his enemies and disarm them, leaving the players confused about what had just happened. Anna watches from a distance, enchanted because poor Curry and the others were returning. Sunayan responds that she shouldn't look or she'd end up seeing a pigsty. Instead, he recommends the two of them return to the dragon's lair. He could handle this on his own. Porter Curry bows, apologizing for being late, and Sunayan replies that it's okay, it wasn't their fault. They say they found Blaze in the forest when they returned, and also Evelyn's corpse, which enrages Sunayan. And Blaze even says that she actually just bumped into his sword by accident, shamelessly pretending. But as long as they let him go, he could reveal a secret that Sunayan would surely be interested in after everything. He says that Melinda was the one who tricked him into going there to kill the dragon. She also killed the great mage Masanti and is now the leader of Village 6. There were still 5,000 villagers waiting to kill the dragon, and Sunayan paused to reflect on that. It seemed like there was more than one newbie village nearby keeping an eye on him, the treasure boss of the region. Blaze asks if he was satisfied with the secret now, and Sunayan acknowledges that it was decent information. He gets excited, asking if he could leave now, and the protagonist agrees and he simply runs away. The kobolds ask if they could really just let that man leave, so Sunayan fires flames at his body and burns him. Sunayan confirms that he never said he would let him return to the city, and the kobolds cheer because their chief was truly amazing. He hoped that Blaze's death could be considered revenge for the late Evelyn after all. Sunayan helped the NPC fulfill her last wish and received her blessing. The system congratulates him for obtaining the special ability called Teleportation Circle. He also earned 6,000 system points in this battle. Sunayan asks if the system could send him directly to a newbie village. The system explains that teleportation could only send him to places he had been or places marked by past generations of dragons. Although he understood, he still recognized that this had been the greatest crisis in his territory this time due to his sleep. If he had been awake, there wouldn't have been so many victims killed during the battle. Sunayan asks if there is any way to shorten or remove his forced sleep trait. The system replies that slightly reducing sleep time and increasing inheritance acceptance efficiency would cost 5,000 points. To moderately reduce sleep and increase inheritance acceptance efficiency would take double the points, and to completely eliminate sleep time required even more points than that. Sunayan gets irritated because after all that he was still forced to sleep anyway. He wondered if he couldn't just refuse the inheritance and remembers Anna from his dreams saying he couldn't reject the inheritance or he would die. Still not understanding why he remembered that strange dream version of Anna, he asked the system if it knew why other people appeared in his dreams. And the system says that usually strangers don't appear in inheritance dreams, but in rare cases a companion spirit could be generated. The companion spirit was created based on what his dream liked, helping to complete the dreams and his magic advancement circle. He remembers how Anna appeared in his dream and smiled when Porikuri approaches asking if something was wrong for him to be smiling like that. Sunayan hides his thoughts and asks if something happened, and he replies that some of the humans surrendered and they wanted to know if they should kill them. The protagonist throws Melinda and orders to gather her men to kill the human soldiers who refused to surrender. They could imprison those who surrendered. And they would keep an eye on Melinda to make sure she stays alive until he returns, and the kobold agrees, wanting to know if his master didn't intend to return to the dragon's nest yet. Sunayan replies not yet, since the 7 days were over, he would personally act as the incinerator that day. Sunayan intended to return the favor to the humans and didn't plan to let the night pass just like that. Outside the dragon's lair later, Anna and Selena approached to speak with the protagonist. Selena cried because the great dragon had returned and wanted to know if Evelyn could ever return after everything. Sunayan asks if they knew all of this. It was shocking because Porikuri's gossip really spread quickly from one to another. Anna asks if he would be sad if one day she dies. Sunayan is confused by the sudden question, and she says that if someone is sad for her, her death would be even sadder. And Sunayan says that death had no meaning, as it was inevitable. He would become strong enough to stay at the top of the food chain. He wouldn't die because of weakness. Selena says she also wants to become stronger. And so time passes. During the night, Sunayan went to the beginner village and the players were alerted of a powerful creature approaching. A monster siege was underway. The protection of the newbie village was activated, scanning the current village to first level. The protection level increased again and all monster stats would be reduced by 50% in the newbie village. The guard shouts to everyone that an enemy has been sighted, and they should all be on immediate alert. The protection of the newbie village was activated, all stats would be reduced, and Sunayan was surprised that something like that existed. The protection mechanism of the novice village affects a spherical area with a radius of 500 meters centered on the novice village. But 500 meters was enough and Sunayan prepares to attack. The players run because the great black dragon was descending and attacking. His power was indeed weakened. That level of explosion was like a chicken pecking at rice and the houses weren't even burned. The players didn't understand why the black dragon was attacking stealthily in the middle of the night so suddenly. Another says they shouldn't be afraid. The dragon was weakened. They could attack together and definitely bring down the black dragon. They shout for everyone to hurry to the central plaza and focus their attacks. The mages should cast their shields too. The protagonist notices that they took the bait quickly and prepared for battle. It doesn't take long for the attacks to come flying toward him. Sunayan receives the attack and the mage celebrates because the attacks worked. The dragon was getting scared. But the protagonist laughs. It was really a joke. Then he uses his teleportation ability to appear in the village. And just like that, he unleashes his attack through the magic circle, and the power reverberates throughout the village. Very powerful as expected. When players upgrade and strengthen without restrictions there, their power and impact were greater. The system congratulates him for destroying a novice village. It was erased from the map thanks to his direct hit. He also acquires the novice village core fragment, something new for Sunayan to see. All players from the novice village of Sakura Island 6 would be resurrected, but they would be sent to random locations in other novice villages. Sunayan was surprised because it ended so quickly. It was too easy to deal with the novices. He asked the system what the village fragment was and if it had any specific use for him in any way. The system responds that this was a highly important item. He was advised to keep it carefully and not waste it. Sunayan asks if that was all. His forces had goblins as master builders, and their construction speed was very fast. He didn't understand what use the construction core of a village could have. The system asks him not to underestimate the village's construction order like that. Sunayan is shocked because it almost seemed like the system was playing a prank by lecturing him like that. And he wonders if the novice village core was meticulously extracted by the system. The previous two forces were simply paper tigers, flammable, and useless. But what really impressed Sunayan was that he received 25,000 points, and now he was certainly motivated. He tells the system to gather materials, then massacre some villages, and they could cultivate his village's resources later that day. The system does not recommend this. Continuously annihilating novice villages would drastically increase his exposure to others. High exposure would mark Sunayan as a world boss, revealing his coordinates along with his group's current strength, and it would be difficult for him to withstand tens of thousands of players attacking his city at the same time. The protagonist is surprised that something so extreme could happen. It seemed like he would end up being hunted every day. But in any case, he decides to let it go. He would be merciful and could spare their lives for now. He asks the system how he could collect novice village core fragments since destroying villages increased exposure. And the system reports that novice villages were only the beginning. Many other novice villages would be destroyed in the future, and the host could temporarily hide under the light of the most powerful individuals that appear. In other words, the system just told him to shut up and do nothing. This world was really backward. The news was incredibly isolated and fragmented, and the system says that Sunayan has the law of the sacrifice ritual. Therefore, he could send and develop followers to understand the movements of the entire continent. Sunayan asks if this sacrifice ritual was like the previous summoning, and when he could receive a summons. The system says that due to Sunayan's current low level, he couldn't choose independently. He could only wait. The protagonist returns to the Silver Moon Forest and sees Anna at the top of the cliff, which makes him shout for her not to jump. She ends up getting scared and falls into the water, just as another girl was in the water and screamed in surprise. Sunayan realizes that they were in the middle of a bath while she and Selena were bathing. Suddenly, the protagonist froze. He could see an NPC suddenly appearing, and the system states that she issued a special summoning invitation. While Sunayan was a bit dizzy, Anna was surprised because he was seeing such an incredible illusion, and she asked if perhaps when Selena fell on his head before jumping into the water a while ago, it made him end up like that. Selena complains that she wasn't that heavy. She learned some first aid to get involved with the mercenary group, but she didn't know if that help would work on dragons. Anna agrees that they should try to do something. While Sunayan was drifting in the middle of the illusions, Selena approaches and hits him squarely to wake him up. He asks her to stop because he was fine. Sunayan is a bit shocked and wonders what exactly she learned in the mercenary group to act like that. Sunayan asks the system if he missed anything, and the system replies that he just missed the summoning while pretending to faint. The protagonist sighs. The system could just do things without his permission. Now he missed the chance to interact with that NPC after his shock. He then asks Selena if men and women could bathe together, and she agrees. There are hot springs in the main cities of every country. They even organize tug-of-war competitions, sometimes in the hot springs, and everyone participates. That immediately motivated Sunayan to hold a tug-of-war competition in the hot springs that very day. Selena didn't know where they could find a hot spring, and he replies that it was just a hot spring. And Sunayan asks the system if it could upgrade with something useful, maybe a heater or something like that. The system says that it could mainly provide transformation services. The purpose of the shop was to increase Sunayan's happiness. Still, he himself didn't seem happy at all now. He complains that if only there were a resource to complain to the system, things would be better. The system just stays quiet until Sunayan asks how many system points it costs to upgrade and modify the explosive dragon form. The system replies that upgrading and modifying the explosive dragon form required 9,000 system points, and now he had enough points for that. Sunayan decides to begin. Then the system alerts that this transformation required the addition of a molten heart, and major modifications would be made to the host's physique, appearance, and muscles, which would cause intense pain. Therefore, the system would add a soundproof barrier to prevent damage to the vocal cords. Sunayan fell to the ground rolling, and the girls were confused, wondering if he was excited or something like that. But it didn't take long for the dragon form to be successfully solidified. This modification provided some enhancements. Muscular strength increased by 50%, bite force and scale strength increased by 200%. The weakness of his armor was reduced by 10%, defense increased by 30%, and body flexibility increased by 100%. Sunayan asks what was going on, and it says that his molten heart could reach a temperature up to 800 degrees. Getting too close would cause burns. Right then he's shocked because he was practically turning to pure fire. He was a dragon, not something like that. It seemed like a rigged sail, and the system asked Sunayan to calm down a bit. After installing the heat dissipator, the molten heart's temperature would drop to 38.6 degrees. And that's in a non-eruptive state. A biological film would be added as external protection to prevent others nearby from being affected. It no longer felt hot, and a refreshing breeze sensation made him feel good. Although it cost little, it was quite pleasant. The system congratulates him for successfully completing the explosion transformation. It increased his overall combat power by 50%. Sunayan feels like it wasn't bad at all, and he asks what the system meant by overall explosive power. The system suggests he breathe a little air, and that was enough to release fire, which made Selena complain because he ruined her clothes with the heat. With the addition of a water-cooled radiator, his body could automatically adjust the temperature of the fire jet. Sunayan asks why they suddenly ran to the water, and Selena says obviously because he ruined their clothes. The protagonist realizes he had never seen Anna wearing a swimsuit before, and in this system he sees there were only a few options. Soon he buys 3 swimsuits in the system and gets in the water himself, not believing there were actually large swimsuits for dragons. The girls enjoy the water, which was really comfortable. Swimming down there was free and fun for Selena. And the clothes called swimsuits were quite suitable for swimming. Sunayan suggests they could start a tug-of-war now. Meanwhile, inside the sacred temple, the yellow-haired girl asks if they still had the strength to resist. Another girl replies that the reinforcements led by Alicia were still 3 days away and they should escape in the meantime. But this makes the princess furious. Escaping wouldn't allow her to take many of her people to survive by her side. She refuses to leave the temple. She intended to stay there and pray to the saint, asking for protection for her people until the end. The other girl complains that the princess could stop praying to the gods. After all, they had been abandoned by them by now. She approaches the princess to make her stop bowing. Even if it was against her will, she should ensure her safety. That was her mission. The princess tells her to let go, but the other girl refuses and just carries her outside right when a magic circle suddenly appears. The two look back thinking a miracle happened, but everyone freezes in confusion when they see that what appeared there was a dragon. While the protagonist was confused for suddenly appearing inside the temple, he asked the system to explain what happened. The girls freeze in shock upon seeing a dragon, and the princess ends up being dropped by the warrior, who apologizes. The princess wonders if the messenger of her god was actually a black dragon, and the system responds to the protagonist. That's because Sunayan himself had said he would automatically accept whenever a summoning was made, and he sighs because the system was really obedient. Still, it wasn't a compliment, and he got irritated because the system was still acting proud of what it had done. He was about to reach a critical state and was suddenly interrupted. Then the princess approaches all happy because God had heard her prayers. She asks if God sent Sunayan to save her people and sing Olivia, but just as he turns around, his tail hits and breaks the statue of the god. The girls freeze in shock and Sunayan coughs, introducing himself as their true god actually. And he didn't like the statue they had made for him, but knew she summoned him for something and asks what it was. The princess says that she, the holy maiden of St. Olivia, was originally from a peaceful and stable country on the southern continent. But a notorious mercenary group of black beasts invaded her country and not only looted and massacred everyone, but also wanted to establish what they called a servant state. Therefore, the two girls bow, begging him to save their people. They swore loyalty to the great dragon, and Sunayan immediately received 100 favorability points. He states that he understood her plea, offering her loyalty would make him eradicate their enemies at once. The princess declares that she, Celestina, was willing to offer her soul and loyalty to him, and even immediately grabs a knife. Soon, he quickly increases the girl's favorability, reaching the highest state at 300 points. But Sunayan hits her hand with his tail after she offers herself in sacrifice, calling her a fool for acting like that. Celestina cries in confusion, and Sunayan replies that he didn't need the loyalty of the dead, but of the living. As long as she follows his guidance and never betrays him, he would ensure her safety above anything else. He himself thought she was crazy for believing in God and thinking of offering her life for loyalty before he could even do anything. Still, Sunayan was surprised because she managed to get that knife from somewhere, and Celestina agrees with the dragon's words. And her favorability points increased, earning 3,000 system points, and Sunayan asks the system what the special ability it promised was. And if this girl was really a special NPC, the system asks him to be patient. She was a special rank as NPC named Celestina. He could use her special ability as soon as he fulfilled her wish, which made the protagonist irritated. The system was getting smarter and smarter. It knew how to attract Sunayan and use him to its advantage for the things it wanted. Sunayan complains that this wasn't what the system told him before, and Celestina asks if she said something wrong because he seemed irritated. And the protagonist sighs, feeling that he was mistaken. The sooner he finished, the better. Now he could just go and eliminate the mercenary group. Maybe he could still catch up to Anna and have the tug of war he wanted, and he tries to leave the temple even though he was too big for that. Celestina says that the leader of the mercenary group was a 4th Order warrior named Jeshit. He was very cruel and commands 3,000 humanoids, so she asks him to be careful when facing them. The protagonist decides to talk about some specific things first, wanting to know how far the mercenary group was from the capital now. He wanted to know their strength and how many troops Celestina still had on her side. She says that the Empire governs more than 3,000 humanoid races. Their strengths vary greatly, ranging from the lowest level goblins to the most robust and powerful ogres. By now, they should have already occupied the sacred wall of Phelan, which is only a day's journey from the capital. Celestina sadly mentions that she no longer had troops to fight on her behalf. Sunayan was impressed by what he heard. No wonder they were begging the gods for help. In this situation, the only thing they could do was pray for divine protection. And the protagonist sighs in relief because he wasn't reckless. Those humanoids were like the players who had just left the novice village. Their combat strength was much stronger than common soldiers, not to mention a powerful 4th Order warrior. Sunayan had to stop to plan something. Meanwhile, at the sacred wall of Phelan, an ogre says that the women of this place were worthy of the coastal country. He only left the house after leaving the woman inside alone. Then a man entered and became furious at the state the beasts had left the place in. That was the level 28 ogre leader. He passed the information to others, who told Ezri to stay quiet because the rest were approaching. At most in 3 days, they wanted to kill all the monsters. Ezri was even more irritated because he would have to wait that long. He had been undercover in this mercenary group for 5 days, and his comrades shouldn't even know how horrible it was. Ezri had to stay there even longer, continuing to witness this human hell and watch that scum of monsters live carefreely. They could just attack at once because they would revive anyway, even if resurrection chances were very precious. Still, It seemed that his companions had no heart in leaving those people in that state. His comrade asks Ezri to calm down and just endure a little longer, but Ezri couldn't do that being in front of such a scene. He covers the woman on the ground and apologizes, intending to take revenge on the others for the horrible things they had done. But before he could leave, his comrades asked Ezri to wait because they didn't belong to those lands. He couldn't forget their main objective, which was to conquer the area and win the bet they had made. Above all, they had to defend their own homeland, but Ezri ignores them and just leaves the place irritated. In the monsters' camp, Ezri revolts and kills the beasts out of sheer fury, and does it on his own. Upon hearing this, the ogre leader laughs because he never expected a traitor to appear among the mercenaries, and they were still foolish enough to fall straight into his trap, which only made Ezri angrier. Then he turns around when he hears a noise. Meanwhile, Sunayan had arrived at the local fortress. He met with Gus, a level 35 Black Knight, saying that the humans had chosen their territory. His presence there infuriated him, and that was just a warning. If they were still there when he returned, still on that wall, he would wipe them all out. Sunayan guarantees that he would burn them all to ashes, but Gus laughs because he believed there was some misunderstanding. That wall belonged to the Sacred Kingdom and not to them. They were just attacking the nation and had nothing to do with it. Gus says he just liked making friends with powerful creatures and didn't define himself as just a human being. He even shows his subordinates, as one could see. In short, they just wanted to form an alliance with the dragon. After conquering the kingdom, they could even share the spoils. They would give 90% and only accept 10%. Sunayan says they were greedy humans and still dared to claim 10% from a place where 100% belonged to him. When he returned, he wanted to see the kingdom's treasures and women right there, otherwise he would wipe them all out. So Sunayan flew off toward the sacred wall of Philino. Everyone freezes when they see the dragon flying and approaching. The warrior shouts that it was an enemy attack and they should scatter. Everyone should stay on alert. They should quickly inform Commander Gus because the dragon had returned. They should create cover because a dragon's breath was incredibly powerful. Sunayan tells them all to run because they were just points for his system. They might not be a just force, but their numbers were truly impressive. He had to admit that the leader of the Black Beast mercenary group was quite intelligent. The barracks were widely dispersed and they even built trenches inside the field they had taken. Sunayan unleashes his fire attack and everyone runs, and another warrior questions why he was attacking the mercenary group. Sunayan stares at Gus and ignores him, which makes the others ask what they should do now, even though they themselves didn't know. Gus didn't understand the reason a black dragon appeared there. It had been years since they last saw a dragon. Gus orders that all elites be informed to prepare for an immediate attack on the sacred capital of the kingdom. They would leave some lackeys at the sacred wall, mainly to prevent possible reinforcements from arriving. He was furious that the dragon showed up like that. No creature had ever challenged him without paying the due price. Gus had better run so he wouldn't return and die. Otherwise, they would certainly deal with him themselves. Celestina, who was on his back, asks if he was really sure about that, and Sunayan responds that he didn't even need to worry because everyone would be gone soon. Once their main force left, they could take the Great Sacred Wall without even lifting a finger to resolve the issue. And they could also take care of all their engineering, cutting off anything they might have programmed to do. Celestina is impressed with the things he thought of. Sunayan was indeed quite clever to think of such things. Then he asked the princess if her knight should be arriving soon. Until then, entrusting the defense of the sacred wall to her would guarantee her safety. Celestina asks if he was talking about Alicia and confirms that the girl was indeed an impressive knight. Next, it would be Celestina's turn, which confused her, and Sunayan says that she should seduce the men, which caught her by surprise. At the pinnacle of the sacred wall, Celestina descended to call the humanoids ugly and despicable and grab their attention. The monsters see Celestina and realize that they were indeed the best. They even dared to approach her like that. Even trembling a little, she warns them not to come closer, otherwise she would use her staff to fight. The monsters approach laughing and ask if she intended to kill them. Celestina asks how they knew what she was about to say. They approach to grab her and she steps back saying not to touch her, and Celestina begs Sunayan to save her. That's when a great explosion happens, distracting the monsters. It was Sunayan who showed up at that moment. He burns the two monsters, and meanwhile Ezri had managed to escape, not believing that a black dragon could really have appeared so suddenly. Suddenly, he hears his comrades calling and asking what the situation was inside the city. They want to report right away. Turning around, Ezri realizes that some people were dead and reports to his comrades that the mercenary group was heading toward the royal capital. There was no need for him to stay hidden in the capital any longer, which made his comrades worried, wondering the reason. Maybe he would be exposed. And Ezri replies that it wasn't a matter of being exposed or not. The entire Black Beast mercenary group was attacked by a black dragon and suffered heavy losses. And the black dragon still intended to return to finish everything and everyone. He suspected Gus wouldn't dare delay and would directly attack the royal capital. They wouldn't even stop to play in the villages along the way. Meanwhile, in the Celestial Dynasty's Namus village, a report arrived about a black dragon appearing. That was truly a great discovery, and a man asks if they had a chance to maybe tame the dragon. Meanwhile, Ezri sent the video of what had happened to his comrades, hoping they would take a good look. Even so, he himself didn't know what kind of joke this was. The level 32 black dragon appeared, a beast still completely unknown. In the city gate report that they heard about the black dragon, and Ezri managed to send Sunayan's video so everyone could see. When the video is shown, the players freeze in shock because it was actually a level 32 4th order magical beast. They heard he was able to wipe out the Sakura village, and because of that, they might have underestimated the strength of the natives. Especially some legendary creatures. One of them asked if it wasn't a bit of an exaggeration to say they were guarding the sacred wall. Ezri's report mentioned only a little of this, but powerful magical beasts weren't that scary. What was truly concerning about them was that they had intelligence similar to a dragon's in particular. They could notice this if they observed carefully. The dragon returned intentionally, and also knew how to use flanking attacks. If all legendary creatures in other worlds were like this, they feared it would be hard to win the bet at this rate, which meant they would not only need to subdue the natives of the world, but also the magical beast itself. With that, all players received updated information that a new world boss had appeared. Meanwhile, Celestina asked what they should do next, since from the sacred wall to the capital, the great dragon would take about a day and a half to arrive. Sunayan replied that she should ask her subordinates to notify the villagers to stay inside their homes and avoid unnecessary casualties. They could only wait there, and she agreed with his instructions. When the system notified Sunayan that a new world boss had appeared, the protagonist became curious to see who the unlucky one was that had been marked as the world boss so quickly. When he realized it was himself, and the protagonist thought the boss was really weak, but then recognized that face and started to break out in a cold sweat. The system said that Sunayan's subordinate had annihilated a rookie village and the rewards were being distributed. As soon as he recognized that the idiot of the world boss was himself, the protagonist froze and wondered what his men had been doing while he was gone. Celestina approached, asking what was wrong, and Sunayan whimpered because this was not a good day to be alive. In fact, he had to focus on returning. He didn't know what might be happening on Anna and the other side. If he came back even a minute later, the entire world might know that he was the world boss and the information would spread quickly. So the protagonist told the princess that he could feel the divine realm calling him and that he needed to leave temporarily, but would return soon. The protagonist teleported back to his lair and called for everyone, but realized no one answered. There was only one kobold sleeping, and Sunayan shouted at him, and he jumped up in fright after waking. He cried upon seeing that his master had returned safely, and Sunayan asked what happened while he was away. The kobold said that he had suddenly disappeared as if captured by some force, so Anna and the others went looking for him, starting with a village. Sunayan realized they must be in a small group invading the rookie village to look for him. Anna checked the Porikuri and confirmed they still hadn't seen any trace of the dragon. Everyone reported they hadn't found any black dragon, and surely they must be in the wrong place. Anna didn't feel they were lying and Sunayan really wasn't there. Anna said they should move forward and keep looking when she turned around upon hearing the dragon's voice. Sunayan was relieved to see that he had returned in time. Unexpectedly, Anna was also a genius at leading soldiers. If he had returned just a bit later, they probably would have reached the kingdom of Anlius and caused a huge mess. Selena asked where he had gone after disappearing suddenly. While they were at the hot springs, she didn't even know how worried Anna had been. Sunayan said he didn't want to vanish like that either. It was all the system's fault deep down, not his. Anna sighed. At least she was relieved to see he was safe. But suddenly, his eyes felt like they were about to go blind. When he looked to the side, Porikuri appeared reporting that all the loot from the villagers had been collected, and there was a giant pile of gold. Sunayan was impressed that something like that was even possible and wondered if he could really be considered the great villain. Many times he felt out of place because he didn't have enough power, at least not as much as the people around him. Setting that aside, Sunayan consumed all the gold, which was a total of 49,700 grams of gold. The high-level consumption analysis allowed him to increase the percentage of the armor strength on the gold attribute scale. His fire element resistance also increased, and Sunayan received the core fragment of the rookie village, along with 20,000 system points. Even so, the protagonist wouldn't fall for what the system was trying to imply, probably trying to convince him to do something wrong. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Alicia asked the princess where the great dragon had gone, because the mercenary group was approaching the royal capital. Celestina was worried because they arrived quickly, not even waiting until nightfall. Alicia mentioned that since the mercenary group stopped going after villages and there were no guards to defend them, their speed increased significantly. This worried the princess because the Dragon Lord had returned to the divine realm the night before and was not there. The knight suggested they should hurry and escape, which made the princess hesitate upon hearing the suggestion again. Meanwhile, Gus and a companion arrived at the place where the royal capital of the kingdom they were to invade should have been. But something didn't seem right. They passed through all the villages but didn't find even a sign of an army. No one even came out to resist the invasions, and they asked if it could be possible that everyone escaped in advance. That's when they all froze as Celestina appeared, enchanted by the gaze of that girl, the saint who appeared on the city walls. Several other girls appeared from within the kingdom, and the mercenaries got excited to attack the city immediately. They didn't have many troops left, only that small number of walls, and they could easily crush them. Gus shouted for them all to shut up. It seemed like they had followed him for so long but left their brains in their pants from being so stupid. Obviously something was wrong. There had to be a trap for all of them to be inviting them in like that. He ordered one of his warriors to gather all the troops to guard the moat. They would attack the city and cut off the supply lines. In a few days, they would come out begging for them, and his soldier agreed that their commander truly was incredible. Only someone with such strategic brilliance could come up with such an impressive plan as his. Gus told Celestina to abandon her feelings and surrender now. She couldn't offer resistance and would willingly become his concubine, thus suffering less. They all laughed while the princess refused. After all, he had massacred all her people, invaded her kingdom, and now dared to defile her realm. She would rather die than let him get away with it, even if it meant taking them all to hell with her. Gus laughed. After all, the neighboring villages were still full of her people. They could be brought to the city gates. He even suggested they could kill those people in front of their princess. Men massacred and women ravaged. One of her people's women begged to be saved because she didn't want to die, and Celestina only grew more furious. Suddenly, a voice said that his idea was indeed very bold, but he would be about to die if he tried something like that. Celestina lifted her gaze happily at the voice she just heard. It was the divine dragon who had just returned. And everyone recognized Sunayan, the dragon who attacked the sacred barrier. He was there to help the saint. When he saw the dragon, Gus became furious because he recognized the dragon that had attacked their group some time before. Sunayan laughed as he flew, praising how good the sun was, but their hearts were cold and filthy, so he was happy to help them. It was as if they vanished into thin air, and then he attacked using his flame lance, and all the men started running. They couldn't stand still. They all had to hurry to assume their positions as quickly as possible. Gus reminded him that he was also a fourth-order warrior and laughed, asking if Sunayan really dared to face him. Even if they were human, they were still all enemies of the great dragon, and their spears were the best weapons they had against dragons. The long spears would be fired immediately. Sometimes skill could make up for the gap in strength. They would concentrate their attack on a single point to strike at the weakest part of their enemy, even if the opponent in question was a great dragon. And so he would surely die. But even the spear shot did nothing, and the warrior was shocked by what he had just seen. He wondered how it was possible that Sunayan had such powerful scales, not believing that a monster like that existed. He fired even more spears in a chain than before in a desperate attempt to bring down the protagonist. Sunayan merely dodged, asking if those toothpicks could even be considered weapons. At that, Gus became furious and decided to use a move that even made his companions nervous. He told everyone to watch carefully his strongest play, and he threw his spear in Sunayan's direction, who caught it immediately. The protagonist coughed from the smoke, not knowing why he had something so flashy. But before the protagonist even noticed, Gus had vanished. He truly was a coward and ran away quickly. Even after saying he would fight one-on-one, he simply bolted. Even the ogres and goblins were shocked. The mercenary group couldn't go on without their captain. Sunayan simply set all the monsters on fire without any mercy as they ran for their lives. Seeing this, Celestina said that Gus and a few other mercenaries managed to escape, and she wanted to know if they should pursue them. Sunayan replied that they couldn't let them get away, while Gus was running out through the Great Sacred Wall. He was furious at the dragon who did this, but he would just make him wait because someday he would return to take revenge for the humiliation he suffered. Before he knew it, the one who appeared above him on the wall was Alicia, questioning what exactly he intended to do. The man was shocked because she was there when she should have been at the border fortress, and he wanted to know how she got to the sacred wall so quickly. Even when this was clearly his territory, Sunayan replied that the sacred wall was now entirely under his control. Gus was shocked by what was happening, not understanding how things ended up like this, and the protagonist finished the job by setting him on fire. The system congratulated him for eliminating the Black Beast mercenary group and awarded him 6,000 system points. Back at the capital, everyone bowed down, swearing loyalty to the great dragon because he had saved the rest of their people. The protagonist said he helped their nation resist this disaster, and in return, they should become his loyal vassals. Celestina agreed, and in the name of her kingdom, from that day on, they willingly became his vassals to be used as he wished. Sunayan gained more favorability points. Just as expected, it was 3,000 points. The difference between NPCs was still significant, and he asked the system what the special ability was this time, wanting to know if there was any additional condition. The system was a bit shocked because he didn't even have a little faith in them, but in any case congratulated him for obtaining a special upgrade. It was called the Power of the Fierce Dragon. Sunayan asked it to load the power directly. He wanted to see what this fierce dragon power was about. The power was loaded and a great gust of wind hit the girls, which made Sunayan apologize because he couldn't hold it back. In fact, the dark aura around him was a grand power. It was like externalizing the ki of a dragon. It was pretty cool. Sunayan's overall abilities would be amplified by 15% when releasing the power of the dragon. Celestina asked him if he intended to leave now, and he said he was leaving. There was something he needed to do before going. She asked what it was, wanting to know if she could help in any way. Sunayan asked if there was any trace of a priestess around. He wanted to know if there was a person who could heal. Alicia approached, guessing that he must be talking about the mysterious priestess Kavya. She resided in the third fortress, but she was always on the move. Because of the war, neither Alicia nor anyone else could determine her exact location. Then Alicia suggested that Sunayan could stay in the kingdom for a few days. They could speed up the search for Priestess Kavya and bring her to him. The protagonist considered that he had no choice but to wait, and Celestina got excited because she would ask someone to prepare accommodations. In her room, Celestina was still enchanted because the dragon was very brave, and suddenly someone knocked on her door. It was Alicia who entered, asking how the princess could just be lying there at such an important moment like this. Celestina didn't understand what happened. Maybe another mercenary group was attacking me again. But the knight replied it wasn't that. It was about the dragon god Celestina had been thinking so much about. The princess replied that she wasn't doing that and it was a huge absurdity, but Alicia could tell that her heart was saying the opposite. After all, she must want to keep Sunayan there with them, and Celestina agreed that it was something she would very much like to do. Then Alicia approached and whispered something in her ear, but Celestina refused because it would be impossible for such a plan to work. She could never do something like that with a god, and Alicia asked if she really planned to just let him leave. Even after being told the method to keep him there, she could still decide what to do and try. A little later, Celestina hoped Sunayan wouldn't be angry about it, but the thought of him leaving made her sad. Anyway, she could end up dying, so she ran to the dragon god's room because she wanted to make a request. The protagonist was surprised to see Celestina there, who appeared saying she wanted to be with him. And besides that, she asked if he could understand her feelings so she could even be called by her name. Sunayan was a bit shocked, but he also felt Anna behind him, furious, and he asked the system what was going on. He didn't know how long Celestina had been acting like that, and whether there was a way to save her. The system told Sunayan that he could remain calm, as it might be related only to his dragon aura. It had a huge impact on those who had a contract with him, which led to that situation where everyone adored him. So he asked if there was anything he could do to save her, even by using his dragon breath, and the system warned that yes, there was. After all, she was a special female S-rank NPC. Killing her directly would only grant him her 4th level magical abilities, which were insignificant to him. In fact, as long as he stayed away from the contracted person, the influence of his dragon aura would be minimized and the contracted person would return to normal. The protagonist then approached Celestina, who was willing right away, but he only wanted to make her open her eyes before Anna did something crazy. Celestina pointed at Anna and asked who she was, and he replied that she was his companion, then asked what Celestina needed. Celestina froze in shock upon hearing that Sunayan already had a partner, now realizing she must have looked like a great fool. She then said she only wanted to discuss something with him. After Sunayan left, she reorganized the army, trained rigorously, and improved the country's military strength. In truth, Celestina had no ulterior motives, and Sunayan sighed, feeling that the world was about to fall into chaos. He couldn't protect that country forever. He was quite busy after all, so he thought it would be good for her to learn to take care of herself. Celestina then quickly said goodbye and left, and the protagonist sighed because she finally went away. He asked Anna not to misunderstand, and she complained because in the end she still had to go through that even while being called a companion. A little later, Alicia came to tell Sunayan that they had found Priestess Kavya, and now he understood, asking for her to be brought inside. Soon they brought a carriage into the room, and the protagonist didn't understand how that could be so terrifying, even in a Western world. The priestess apologized, but she couldn't meet with other people directly, so she hoped Sunayan could understand. It was weird because Kavya couldn't show her face, and he wondered if she was just ugly or maybe trying to be mysterious. Sunayan asked if she could treat illnesses, and Kavya agreed, and he asked if she could check what was wrong with Anna's body. He brought Anna into the carriage, where Kavya mentioned there were too many people there and it wasn't a suitable place to examine her. The protagonist told everyone to leave now and asked Kavya if it was a little better now. Anna clung to Sunayan, a bit afraid of what might happen during that evaluation. But he assured her she didn't need to be afraid because he would be with her. After all, Anna's resistance wouldn't last more than a week at this rate. If they didn't find a solution soon, it was estimated that her HP would start to collapse in less than a month. Sunayan said it would just be a quick check and told Anna to take it easy as no danger would approach her. She ended up being drawn to the cute cats near the carriage. When Anna approached to pet one, it suddenly grew huge, to the point of looking like a person. She was frightened by what she saw. The cat approached and opened its mouth as if to swallow Anna, which made her call for Sunayan's help. The cat swallowed Anna's head to Sunayan's shock, and he ordered it to spit her out immediately. He sent the cats flying away and questioned what Kagwia thought she was suddenly doing with those cats. And he intended to warn her that she should make that stupid cat spit Anna out, or else he would see the consequences. The priestess asked him to calm down. This was just a method to examine Anna's condition, and that's how Kagwia discovered that she was being afflicted by a cruel curse, and that her body might have died a long time ago. She knew that Sunayan was keeping her alive through other means, and the protagonist asked what that had to do with anything. He just wanted her to release Anna right now. His patience was limited, and he finally broke the carriage, making Kaguya come out of it. The protagonist was surprised as the priestess was startled by the destruction of her carriage, nervously looking around to see if anyone saw her. This was the human world. Sunayan asked if she was okay, but Kaguya shrank in fear. Then he covered her head with a helmet and she went quiet, which made the protagonist wonder if she had some kind of phobia. And just for fun, he took off her helmet, which scared her again to the point where Kaguya used an ability to hide. Sunayan was somewhat impressed by what he was seeing and asked her where Anna was, then Kaguya threw a seal in his direction. And from the seal came Anna, who returned to Sunayan's arms, merely sleeping and mumbling that something was delicious. Sunayan asked what the priestess had done to her, and Kaguya said she had only made her sleep, just gave her good dreams. Kaguya asked if he didn't want to know the purpose of the curse that was inside her, and Sunayan asked what it was. Kaguya said that the purpose of the curse was to steal talents, and the source of the curse was in her heart. They must have been cast by someone very close, and unless they found the person who cast the curse and broke it, it would continue. Otherwise, once the power in her body disappeared, her life would quickly come to an end. Kaguya mentioned that there might be another way, and Sunayan quickly begged her to explain how it worked. And she said the easiest way to do that was to replace her heart, but Sunayan was somewhat shocked by the idea. It wasn't that simple to replace someone's heart as if changing a light bulb, yet she still said such a thing. Even so, she said his partner had already been imbued with Dragon Ki anyway, so it would be better to use a dragon's heart. Sunayan asked about that since he was the only dragon within 100 miles. He was disturbed because nothing could save Anna's life. Then the priestess suggested that he could just find the person who cursed his wife after all. But he replied that he couldn't do that. If Kaguya herself could handle the situation, he would give a great reward. She replied that she could try her best, but couldn't guarantee she could find the person who caused the curse. Kaguya used a seal to try to locate the one who cast the curse, and the seal stuck to Anna's body. Suddenly, a huge creature appeared and scared Kaguya, and the power even shattered the place where she was hiding. Sunayan ran to catch her before she could fall and asked if she saw anything using her seal. The protagonist said that she had failed. The power behind the curse was too strong, they should forget about it. Even if they knew who cast the curse, by the time they found them, it would be too late to make it worthwhile. Sunayan asked the system if there was a way to create more hearts, and it replied that the system could create any kind of heart he wanted. The protagonist was surprised, and the system continued saying that mechanical, demonic, or even god hearts were possible, as long as there were enough system points. But Sunayan only had one heart that belonged to him and him alone. In any case, it wasn't possible to create something from scratch. The system could only modify an existing thing, causing mutations under the influence of the rules. Sunayan asked about the lava heart, and the system replied that it wasn't a real heart. A heart that controls blood circulation in your body is different from the lava heart, which was only an energy core. Sunayan asked if giving his heart to Anna would result in her dying, and the system agreed that theoretically that would be the case. And the protagonist asked at least to be told the modification plan to give his heart to Anna. He wanted to stop all this stalling. Sunayan had no money and no points. Finally, the system revealed a hidden item in the shop called the golden fruit. Although it could replicate body organs, it needed to be carefully cultivated in an appropriate environment. When it transformed into a heart, it could replace Sunayan's. He was shocked because the price was 100,000 points. It seemed insane that the prices were rising so much. The system said it operated with integrity and nothing else, but of course the protagonist didn't believe that at all. As if it had any integrity. If that were the case, it could even rename itself as the Good Shepherd system. As he turned around, he noticed that Anna was still saying in her sleep that she would always be with him even after everything. If it were possible to extend the suppression of the curse and wait until that fruit became a heart, then Anna's curse could be saved. Sunayan asked Kaguya if they could extend the time of suppression for Anna's curse, since they couldn't find who had cast it. The priestess said there was a method in ancient texts, but it required that the two of them be completely honest with each other. Sunayan immediately became emotional and asked exactly what he had to do, and Kaguya asked if he was truly willing to do this. And he laughed since honesty wasn't a simple thing, which made her agree that, as expected of the divine dragon, he had done the right thing. In that case, they could now bind the link between the two of them. Sunayan asked if she would be joining them as well, and Kaguya mentioned that in truth she was just an observer responsible for opening the formation and activating the bond. Once the bond was activated, the life force of the weaker one would be used to sustain the life of the dying, and she asked again if he felt ready. Sunayan felt it would be a rather complex situation and agreed that they could start immediately because he was ready. She said that according to ancient records before beginning, a rope needed to be placed on the body. The protagonist was somewhat shocked by this and asked if the ancient texts were really that exciting and if they could even be trusted. Kaguya ignored him and began the process. Few in the world could achieve the level of honesty required, all to be able to reveal all the secrets of the divine dragon's past without reservation, and she admired the sincerity of his courage. Sunayan realized that complete honesty was a little different from what he imagined. It felt like letting people see his internet browsing history. Although he asked her to stop, Kaguya was even crying emotionally. Even though she admired his devotion, it was too much to bear. In the Emerald Forest, a little girl named Anna was called. It was her sister Luna, whom Anna ran to hug after missing her so much and crying. But Luna didn't understand until she realized she had become that girl who was previously Su Nayan and had taken Luna's body. Anna asked Luna if she brought her delicious sweets again, and Su Nayan thought she was truly an adorable girl. Her chubby face was pleasant to squeeze. He remembered that the priestess had said earlier that the bonds would reveal people's deepest secrets, and this might be Anna's dream. He kept wondering how it must feel and touched it, surprised because Luna's body was quite soft. Anna stepped back a little scared, and he himself admitted it was kind of a weird action on his part. Then Anna said she was afraid she might awaken as a yes spirit, and Su Nayan asked what that was. Suddenly, another girl appeared running, asking why Anna had run to the outskirts of the forest. There were dangerous monsters there. Besides that, Anna's sister was looking for her. The awakening ceremony had started, and the 10 elders were waiting for her. Anna was surprised to hear from Jia that the awakening ceremony had begun, and Jia mentioned that she didn't need to worry. Anna would surely awaken as a noble yes spirit, and so the three returned to the place where several people were gathered. Su Nayan felt the dream change scenes. As expected, the place shifted according to the dreamer's perspective. A man told Anna that this was the 10th awakening insight, and she should be insightful by now. If she failed again, she would lose her qualification to continue studying at the elite academy, and she and her family would be expelled from the central area of the Emerald Forest. Anna agreed. Even though she was sad, she would certainly work to gain more insights. But the man called her a disgrace and slapped her face. 10 times was a real waste of the wild resources granted by the great Emperor Shui. Not even a bit of success. Anna was a great disgrace to the spirits, until Luna stepped forward to confront the old man for what he did. After Luna defended Anna from the old man, he openly declared that she and her family would be expelled from the central region and forced to live outside the Emerald Forest. But Luna assured Anna not to worry. They had managed to drive away those fools who messed with her. A little later, Anna happily came over because she had found fruit for them to eat that day. She knew Luna must be starving. She froze when she saw some eyes in the darkness mentioning that she had wasted too many resources and would have to make up for it. They were all half beasts, but even so, Anna had 10 opportunities to awaken, while others had only 3. The 3 demi-humans pressured the girl, saying that if they had 10 chances to comprehend and awaken, they would have awakened a long time ago. It was all Anna's fault for wasting all of that. Everything was because of her, so she would have to make up for it and pay the price. Anna fell to the ground begging for forgiveness, but Luna intervened to fight with them, telling all of them to leave right now. If they dared to intimidate her again, people like them would fall into her hands, so she walked Anna back to the house they had built to live in now. And it wasn't bad at all for a first time. Then the scene suddenly changed, and the protagonist noticed that the scene shifted abruptly. He wondered if Anna had been bullied again to be hiding inside the closet, and Luna went out to check if there was anyone trying to pick a fight with her sister. But an arm suddenly appeared coming out of her body, and Su Nayan realized they were the same hands that had attacked Kaguya before. In the real world, the protagonist woke up as a dragon and saw Hannah crying, begging him not to die because of her. Beside them, a figure said it was useless. The divine dragon was not going to wake up, and Anna turned frightened in that direction. It was the priestess explaining that the divine dragon had fallen into a deep sleep to save her from her curse. Anna didn't understand why. He didn't mean to do any of that because she wasn't someone worth sacrificing for. Su Nayan felt there were still benefits to pretending to sleep and accepted her hugs. Anna asked how they could wake up the dragon, and Kaguya suggested that maybe they could just try talking to him. So Anna said she had a strange dream. She dreamed of a shiny iron board and some images of women in swimsuits, heard someone talk about a 32G compressed file and browsing history. These were things she had never heard before, but they sounded impressive, and Su Nayan immediately woke up, pulling away to Anna's relief. Kaguya was shocked because talking to him had actually worked. The truth was that while Su Nayan was seeing Anna's past, she had seen parts of his. Anna asked what he was saying just a moment ago, and Su Nayan replied that it was nothing. He was just mourning his lost youth. In the sacred temple in the royal capital, they made a statue in honor of the divine dragon, and Celestina showed it to Su Nayan to see how much they revered him. She intended to look at his heroic figure every day and offer her blessings and prayers as she always had. Su Nayan wondered if she at least couldn't have chosen a better pose than that one, which was anything but dignified. Celestina asked if he couldn't stay a little longer this time. He mentioned that he thought this place was stable now and that he should return. That's because Anna was watching everything and clearly got irritated whenever Celestina got too close or said suggestive things. Still, she was sad because Su Nayan would be leaving so soon and said she would miss him. Back at the dragon's lair, the protagonist realized that the time he spent away wasn't bad at all. Barely any time had passed since he left. Until then, the monsters were living quite orderly lives, and Porikuri was moved to see that his lord had finally returned. The protagonist asked to wait because they could talk about some things later. He was a bit tired after the trip. When Su Nayan lay down, Anna asked him what was wrong, worried that he might be feeling unwell in some way. The protagonist replied that he was fine, just a bit tired after everything that had happened. He felt like he had a fever and his head was dizzy. Sunayan asked the system if dragons could get sick, and the system offered something to help relieve some of his pain. The protagonist was surprised because he was suffering from a weakened version of Anna's pain. It was hard to imagine how much she must have suffered before. That's when he froze seeing Anna approach. She asked him not to move, she was just measuring his body temperature. She acknowledged that his body was warm, and Sunayan mentioned that a dragon's body temperature was still different from that of a normal person. Anna stepped back, stammering that she knew that, and asked him to wait a bit because she would prepare some medicinal soup. She remembered Kaguya saying earlier that if Sunayan ever felt discomfort, he could try the insects because they were all nutritious. Beside her, Celestina was shocked, asking what she was doing with those things, and Anna proudly said it was medicinal soup for Sunayan. These were just some medicinal ingredients. Meanwhile, in the beginner village of Sakura 2, the humans were recovering. A man was fascinated with a kobold head and wondered where he should put it on display. Suddenly, a man burst into the room reporting that there was a player named George wanting to see him, and he complained because he was enjoying the art and told him to go away at once, yet the subordinate mentioned that his lord might like the news. That's because the person in question knew the whereabouts of a dragon, and the man became curious, ordering them to bring this person inside. In parallel in the dragon's lair, Anna returned to find Sunayan with a wicked smile to wake him up and give him his medicine. He says that he used to endure all his illnesses alone, but now there was someone who cared about him. He was touched because Anna was so considerate. When he saw the soup she had prepared, Sunayan asked if it wasn't a bit too early to play dead to the point of meaning to eat that. Even so, Anna asked the protagonist to drink it quickly, as she had been preparing it for a long time. Selena appeared, questioning whether Sunayan really intended to disregard everything she had prepared. After all, she had spent the whole night taking care of him. The protagonist laughs, agreeing that he would never do that, even though it was true that he had been smelling something burnt for a while and was curious about what it was. But anyway, if he died, nothing would change, so Sunayan ate the soup all at once without thinking too much. That taste was so bad it felt like death itself, and he seriously suspected Anna was getting revenge because he forced her to take medicine in the past. Anna smiles, telling the dragon not to drink so quickly. There was still an entire cauldron for them to enjoy and eat together, which shocked him. Back in the Sakura village, a player mentions that he heard that man was incredibly brave. Then suddenly the player felt pain in his knee, being forced to kneel, and the man smiled because he hated seeing the face of the weak. He had heard that player had been beaten up by a group of low-level monsters in the previous Sakura village. The player stammers that it wasn't quite like that. The monsters might have been influenced by the black dragon and had become very powerful, practically demonic. Therefore, he asked the man to let him join him. He would take him to the black dragon's lair and give information. The man asks if the player still didn't know because the black dragon he was talking about was at the top of the world boss list. Still, he questions why he wanted to join them that day, and the player agrees because Sunayan also had a half-beast with him. Her figure and appearance were excellent. The player says the man would love to have her head in his collection. He shows a photo of the half-demon and the man instantly becomes interested. She got smooth fur, fluffy ears, and pure white, a perfect work of art. She should be placed on the right side, and the dragon's head would go on the left side of his display. The man became motivated, imagining both their heads beside his throne, and the player thinks that now the real show was about to begin, no matter which side wins. During the night, Sunayan and the girls slept together, and he ended up witnessing the scene of Selena squeezing something she shouldn't, and he kept wondering what exactly she was dreaming to do those things in front of everyone. Anna had clearly gotten tired after spending the whole night working on the medicine and should be exhausted. She should be allowed to rest. Sunayan picks up Selena and moves her away from Anna so she wouldn't touch her, hoping the girl was really asleep. Even though the previous day's medicine tasted awful, he ended up eating it all and felt much better that day. Poor Kuri appeared in the cave to report that the prisoners from the previous battle were being held on the back mountain and wanted to know how they should deal with them. Sunayan had completely forgotten about the prisoners of war and asks how many people there were, and he replies there were a total of 213 prisoners. It was a frightening number, and the protagonist asks what they were eating while Sunayan had been away all this time. Portakuri replies that he didn't know, hadn't considered it, but if they did nothing, they might end up eating the grass from the trees. They gnawed their roots and stripped the flowers. Hearing all this made Sunayan hope that none of them had accidentally starved to death, and he says they should go check the situation. They refer to the architectural style of Sakura Village number 1 of the Wind Prison when building that prison. Not only that, he had his men take turns watching the cells every day. Each of those demons and beasts, although silent, was restrained by the Dark House who avoid chaos. Sunayan agrees that it was indeed a good idea. It seemed poor Kuri had a special talent for handling constructions. The grass was gnawed down to the ground, the soil cultivated like a machine had done it. The result was impressive. The protagonist thought it would be a good opportunity to make them farm. The standard of living and treatment for prisoners of war should be unmatched. Poor Kuri was impressed. He himself had never thought of any of that. But Sunayan was someone capable of reflecting on everything. He asks what exactly they should plant, so the protagonist opens the system to check the available options. He suggests they could plant potatoes that were easy to grow, and the system recognizes when he purchases a large number of potato spores. Meanwhile, some men were inside a cave eating meat after hunting some animals. Two of them served a boss they would take care of the meat shield, but they had run out of food for the month, and the man tells the other two to leave. The two walk away sighing in frustration. They thought that following the strongest person on the team to the starting village would mean a life of luxury. But they never imagined that 1 month's worth of food for a normal person would last only a week because of how much he ate. The two think they should sneak away while they still could. Sooner or later, they would end up being eaten alive. Suddenly, a man appears asking what the two were talking about, scaring them as they quickly change the subject. They mention that they just received an invitation from the second Sakura village and were only wondering if he'd like to go. In parallel, the chief of Village 2 is talking with the others, and two of them ask if there was someone important enough to make them wait like that in the meeting. The chief tells everyone not to laugh. It wasn't that he didn't invite them, he just hadn't thought about it to begin with. Behind the chief, another massive player appears and asks if they were all talking about him now that he'd been invited. The chief was surprised and turned around asking who was there, not believing it when he appeared behind his chair. No one had noticed his approach. The chief recognized him as the shadow assassin David. The distant mountain truly lived up to its name. The chief introduces himself as Waldoli, leader of the distant mountain, and welcomed all of them. Next to him, a player is surprised that a man of that size was an assassin, which enrages David, but Waldoli handles it quickly. He kicks the player, mentioning to David that it was his fault because his watchdog didn't bark properly. Next to them, David grabs the boy laughing because he really was unique, and the player freezes in fear at the sight. Waldole mentions that if David liked him, he could have him, and that's when another man appears at the meeting, commenting that it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. Waldole says that now that everyone was gathered, he gets straight to the point. The reason he invited all of them, who were players, was to hunt the dragon boss. The players freeze upon hearing that, asking if he was referring to the black dragon that had recently become a world boss. The weak player thinks that he came to join Waldole to swear loyalty, but even so he was treated like he was nothing. He shouldn't be blamed for what happens next. The player tells Waldoli that he knows a way to capture the black dragon because Anna was a beautiful creature. If they capture her, they could also capture the black dragon, and thus his lord could secure 2 perfect heads. The player thinks they were all fools. Capturing Anna would only infuriate Sunayan, and they could only wait for their cruel end. In parallel, Anna sneezes and Sunayan asks what was wrong. Maybe she was still tired and got sick. After all, she had spent the entire afternoon preparing medicine the night before. She couldn't do that kind of thing again or she'd worry him. He was concerned that the girl might be getting sick again, but she replies that it was nothing. She just felt a very cold malice all of a sudden. Even so, Sunayan couldn't feel any malice, didn't find any outsiders trying to invade his space or anything like that. Maybe it was because Anna was sick, and this was a hint that he should hug her and comfort her for her supposed sentimentality. Then Anna says there was something she wanted to give him, and it was certainly something Sunayan had wanted for a long time. She shows that it was a key, and Sunayan asks if it was a key to a treasure chest. Anna agrees she received the treasure chest key from the mage Melinda. It really was amazing after all. Even so, Selena shows that she received many more keys than that. There was nothing special about Anna's keys. And Sunayan freezes in shock because suddenly they had managed to get that terrifying number of keys all of a sudden. Selena laughs. She just reassembled Jason's body parts and broke them again to get the keys. Meanwhile, Melinda was in prison complaining to Jason because it was all his fault. If it weren't for his false information, she would still be the great leader. Jason replies that she was the great useless one and still had the nerve to throw the blame on him like that. Melinda thinks things couldn't go on like this. She needed to think of a way to escape quickly as soon as possible. With that, she leans in to talk to Jason, trying to seduce him, which works successfully, and he says he only had 500 invasion points. All his other points were forced into buying the keys, but he refused to hand his over no matter what. Melinda was furious. They were practically dead there and could still use resurrection. They just needed to hand over a random key to trick the girl from before. Jason gets irritated because there's no way he'd do that again. His limbs were broken for a reason now. Then she had an idea, suggesting that Jason give her all his invasion points, and after escaping, she'd come back to save him. In parallel, Waldoli observes the Black Dragon's lair and orders George to go ahead and capture Anna, which shocks him. George gets nervous about it, but David immediately says he can't refuse. If he wants to join them, he has to prove his own skills. Besides, capturing Anna was his idea in the first place, and he had to prove himself useful. But he shouldn't worry because his talent was quite special. George freezes in fear when the assassin speaks that way. Then George invades the lair while the guards are asleep, surprised that none of them recognized him. When he enters the place, he finds Anna immediately, the person they had been searching for from the very beginning. In parallel, Melinda exchanged points with Jason and freed herself, and he says she could use invasion on him. He asks her not to forget to come back and save him, and she promises she would return to get him out of that situation. And at that very moment, Jason regrets it because Melinda strangles him to death, and she leaves just in time as, in parallel, Anna falls to the ground. One of the half-beasts approaches to help her, and she thanks him because she accidentally twisted her ankle. He doesn't understand why she was near the prison now, and Anna mentions that she dropped something when she arrived during the day. She also wanted to check if everyone was on guard diligently, and the Beastman reports that he was guarding seriously. Anna points to the side because she didn't see anyone on guard, and he quickly runs back to his post. In truth, that person wasn't Anna, but Melinda. She bought the metamorphosis potion, and now everyone saw her as that person. That way, Melinda would have a chance to escape, maybe even get close to the dragon and kill him herself. While she was walking, she suddenly bumped into George, who took the opportunity to take her, thinking she was the real Anna. Meanwhile, a kobold reports to Sunayan that he just saw Anna, and he replies that it would be impossible because she had been there the whole time. But when he turned around, he realized Anna had disappeared and immediately stood up, not knowing where she had gone so suddenly. The protagonist took flight looking for Anna, and the players pointed to the sky when they saw him above them. They got worried because they had been noticed, but David assures them they had nothing to worry about because no one could see them there. Another man says that Sunayan must be looking for Anna. It seemed that George had managed to fulfill his word. Waldoli comments that the boys seemed quite useful, but the other man says their situation was still not optimistic. Sunayan seemed different from the system's description, looked stronger, and was a 4th level magic beast. Waldoli draws his sword, suggesting it must be the strongest magic beast he had ever encountered, and they would all fall under his bloodlust without delay. Even if it were a 6th level dragon, among dragons there should be no difference. It was still a lamb for the slaughter, not to mention they had a secret weapon. Sunayan flew and landed calling out for Anna, until he turned and saw someone running toward him. Must have been a stealth suit that prevented him from noticing earlier. Waldoli attacks before Sunayan can say to wait and simply explodes everything. Delighted that he killed him with one strike, the dragon boss was nothing. The protagonist appears from above asking if that was really it, and Waldoli freezes in surprise because the dragon was supposed to be below. And suddenly he realizes his sword also disappeared along with his bloodlust, and Sunayan asks if he was talking about that broken blade. He throws it away, complaining that the man was very dishonorable, his leg went numb, and he even stumbled. Waldoli didn't even think something like that was possible, and he received notifications saying his power hit the target, but the attack failed. His bloodlust and Waldoli's sword had been taken. Now he had nothing left to fight back with. Sunayan calls him a despicable insect for daring to invade his territory and says he should just prepare to die right now. When you look back, the protagonist was attacked in the eye, but didn't feel anything because he was surprised to see he had been shot by a bullet. In the distance, the sniper was shocked because the dragon's scales were so tough that his bullet only managed to scratch the skin. Still, suddenly Sunayan disappeared, and the sniper wondered where he had gone, only for the dragon himself to appear behind him, asking if he was looking for him. He turns around trying to flee and shoots at the protagonist, who uses his ability to take the man's weapon at that exact moment. The player is shocked because his weapon went out of control and he couldn't use it, and Sunayan approaches to bite his body. But before he could end his life, Waldoli says to wait and asks if he wanted Anna to die. The girl was being held hostage by Waldoli, which made Sunayan release the player and demand Waldoli release Anna, or else he'd make them suffer a terrible death. Waldoli laughs because Sunayan really was terrifying and pushes Anna, saying he could go save her if he had any courage. The girl fell while calling for help because she was afraid of heights, and Sunayan ran to catch her before she could get hurt. When he looked up, suddenly his body was surrounded by a magic circle, and he tried to break through it, but couldn't pass. It was a mere formation that the protagonist couldn't believe was being used to trap him like that. At that moment, David charged at him, saying he could prepare his head to experience the power of his assassin and become a pile of meat. The sniper assesses that they might have been tricked using their system. Judging by his strength and appearance, this black dragon didn't seem like a 4th level one. Sunayan's tail was able to break the magic barrier, which would trap even 6th-grade demons. And the armor of this black dragon was very thick, so they feared the formation wouldn't be able to hold Sunayan for much longer. Waldoli orders everyone to attack together before that could happen, so they all unleash their attacks on the protagonist inside the formation. Sunayan realizes that the dragon's language magic would have no effect within the formation, and he couldn't even use dragon breath with Anna inside. Anna thinks that this formation couldn't trap players, so she, Melinda, should take the chance to escape quickly. Melinda takes advantage to escape, but then something attacks her from behind, and she's shocked that such a thing happened. The protagonist and everyone turn in shock at what they had just seen, and Waldoli furiously asks who committed such an atrocity. One of the mages freezes since Waldoli himself had said for everyone to attack with full power, and they accidentally hit the girl. Waldoli yells that he said to attack the black dragon, not the girl, and Sunayan becomes furious, vowing to kill all of them. Everyone becomes terrified upon seeing his rage and wants to run and escape, and the protagonist breaks the barrier to get out of where he was. Sunayan unleashes flames at the mage who killed the girl Anna, and David uses his ability to create multiple copies of himself. He charges at the protagonist to try to kill him, attacking from various places at the same time. David thought it was a pity to use that ability just to escape, but at least he could hold the black dragon off for a while. At that moment, David starts running when Sunayan tells the system he wants to break and unlock the fusion of hearts. The Silver Moon Forest begins to erupt in a massive explosion of fire due to the black dragon's fury. The system congratulates the protagonist. He successfully killed all the invading players in just 1 minute. Thus, it added the mission and granted 15,000 system reward points, and later Sunayan returned to the dragon's lair. Porikuri appeared to report that Anna had returned home, and Sunayan responds that he knew that well. He believed that Anna should have returned as a soul to the Emerald Forest by now, but Porikuri didn't understand any of it. He kept asking if Sunayan was quoting some profound saying. After all, Anna was fully happy eating some honey she found in the swamp. She showed up all cheerful, saying that now Sunayan wouldn't find his medicine bitter anymore and wouldn't complain. The protagonist cries, thinking he was hallucinating. In truth, longing was one thing, but this was beyond anything. Sunayan touches Anna, feeling it was a very realistic hallucination, and Porikuri reports that 2 human players who were prisoners had disappeared. They also found a vial of illusion potion inside, and now Sunayan understood that the mage Melinda was the one who transformed into Anna to try to escape. Now the protagonist was relieved to see that Anna hadn't died, which made her angry because while she was away, he was out causing trouble. Sunayan gets nervous trying to explain himself, and so he spends some time telling her what happened. Meanwhile, King Anlius received a report from his soldier, who says that the people of the Ireland Empire had arrived. It seemed they all came wanting the mage Mesant back, and Anlius gets irritated because they had the audacity to return and demand him. Mesant was a completely useless man. They expanded their forces and offered him money, and didn't even see a single dragon scale. Not only that, but Mesant never appeared again and probably just fled far away after everything they had offered. Anlius orders them to tell the people from the Empire that Mesanti was devoured by the dragon and was a complete failure. But before that could happen, a woman appears. This was Anlius' queen, and the king is shocked to see she had returned. The queen says she heard that something important had happened in Anlius and finished her visits to relatives and friends before coming back. The queen tells the king that she heard to cure the prince's illness, he thought it was necessary to borrow someone from the Ireland Empire. He agrees that was what happened, but still feels nervous because he wants to explain better what actually occurred. But she just slaps the king across the face because he caused a huge mess while she was away taking care of other matters. Now that Mesanti had died in their territory, that kind of behavior toward the empire was like trying to provoke a war between the 2 nations. The king whines, saying he just wanted to be able to cure the prince's impotence. The queen ignores him and tells the soldier to leave and invite the envoy to enter. The warrior ran off, and in came the guests from the empire, greeting the royal family and complimenting how the queen really was as beautiful as the rumors said. For a long time, he had heard that the king of Anlius was a complete fool, and that's why the general had sent the mage Mesant to handle things. But still, it was the most useless of all mages who ended up there, even without knowing that a queen of such beauty resided in that place. The queen thanks the envoy for his words, and he says that with all due respect, he heard the dragon-slaying army failed and no one returned alive. And he asks if she was prepared to hand over Mesan, or whether they would offer some kind of compensation. The king stammers trying to respond, and the queen answers that the dragon-slaying army really did fail, but Masani was not necessarily dead. There were soldiers who had been found who said they hadn't seen Mesant before entering the Silver Moon Forest. The envoy questions whether they were suggesting Mesanti deserted his mission, and she laughs at the idea, and asks him not to misunderstand. After all, their intention was to resolve everything peacefully from the beginning. They sent people to investigate what happened, and she suggests the envoy could stay there a bit longer. If the great mage Mesant really died while slaying the dragon, they could discuss some sort of compensation. He replies that he hopes things can be resolved quickly. He couldn't just stay there waiting much longer. In parallel in the dragon's lair, Sunayan sighs because Anna hadn't spoken to him for 2 whole days. He asked the system which rookie villages were nearby. He planned to wipe them all out one by one so they'd never disturb him again. The system warns that doing so would cause him to be marked as a permanent boss, and a teleport matrix would be generated for players to use. That way, they could always come to Sunayan whenever they wanted. They could teleport directly to the Silver Moon Forest through the teleport matrix. This shocked the protagonist. Originally, he wanted to destroy the rookie villages to avoid future trouble, but that was even more dangerous. But if he couldn't attack rookie villages, he didn't know how he could earn system points and improve. Meanwhile, in the Novice City Dynasty, Isri was surprised when he saw the system had updated the boss information. He wonders whether the Black Dragon had ended up being killed, or perhaps even stronger monsters had begun to appear. It seemed the matter of facing the Black Dragon would have to be put on hold. He hoped at least that he was still alive because Sunayan was a worthy opponent. In parallel in the dragon's lair, it was detected that Sunayan's exposure had decreased due to unknown reasons, and he should investigate the cause himself. With a hint, the system mentions that the decrease in exposure might be related to the appearance of heroic figures or epic monsters. Sunayan acts dramatically, asking the system if it couldn't just say directly what it was. After all, they had known each other for a long time. He said the system was being so discreet that they couldn't continue like this, and the system hesitates a bit before responding. The system could only detect that exposure had decreased. The specific reason occurred globally and was beyond its detection capabilities. After all, the system wasn't a satellite, which made the protagonist sigh, understanding its limitations. Since the exposure had decreased, he could now continue updating the rookie village. At the moment, making money was his main priority. With that, he tells poor Kiri to gather the army and prepare for a new battle, and he agrees, asking where they were going. Sunayan replies that they would head north of the Morrigan Desert to attack rookie village Sakura No. 2. Then he asks the system if there's any modification that could strengthen his men along with himself. The protagonist wonders if it could be possible that when he evolves, they evolve with him, and the system agrees. There was a modification that met his needs. It was located on page 14,879, item 67 of Neural Modifications. The modification project was called Basic Sworn Will, and it cost 100,000 system points to activate. When Sunayan installs the modification, it would promote the simultaneous evolution of 1,000 units whose life level was lower than his. The protagonist wonders if that kind of thing could really be suitable for a dragon like him, and he comments to the system that its current prices were too high, to which the system replies that it was simply fair and honest and no bargaining. Meanwhile, in the queen's palace, she was getting ready when someone appeared to greet her. The girl in question was Celestial, and the queen sends the maids away. No one was allowed to enter without her permission. Celestial mentions that she was wearing the bracelet her sister left behind before disappearing, and asks the queen if she was sure she could help find her sister. The queen agrees as long as she can pay the required price. Celestial replies that she could offer 10 years of her youth as long as it helps her find her sister Evelyn. The queen then goes to her mirror and places Celestial's bracelet inside it, showing her a scene. Sunayan with Evelyn's dead body. Meanwhile, the protagonist and his kobold army were marching, and poor Kuri asks if they could rest a bit. It was too hot. Sunayan replies there was no need, even though he felt it was difficult. He had a temperature radiator to control his body, but it was still very hot. Sunayan belatedly remembers that Anna and the others were still on his back and immediately becomes worried. Anna and Selena were suffering from mild heat stroke due to all the heat, so the protagonist grabs water to wet their bodies and cool them down. Anna complained because she was uncomfortable with the wet clothes, and Sunayan even approached to help her with that. But then they hear the voice of a girl calling for help as two level 25 players approach her. They were taunting the girl because no one would come to save her, and Sunayan was shocked because it showed both were Indian players, even though the map had never shown a starting village from any nearby players, and he wonders if it might be a system error. The system replies that since Sunayan encountered this situation, it would provide an explanation. Players from different worlds have different faction abilities. The Indian faction's ability was to hide the starting village's location. It was known that the Sakura faction's ability was martial spirit, boosting team morale and providing a fearless mindset this way. The Pretty faction's ability was technological analysis, increasing technological creativity, and the host might have seen the firearms they created. Sunayan was impressed because faction abilities could be so incredible. No wonder nothing showed up on the map. Sunayan asks what the starting village abilities were for other factions, and the system says that since he hadn't had close contact with players from other factions, it was unknown. Meanwhile, the girl had her clothes torn and thought they were asking for death, but before she could attack, it was Sunayan who intervened right away. He strikes both men while the girl is surprised to be rescued by a dragon. He holds her while Sala still is happy because she had finally found him. That was faster than expected. Shortly after, the two players emerged from the water, not knowing who had dared to send them flying like that. As they got out of the water, they realized it was a huge dragon. Sunayan simply attacked the men and drove them away. Sala still thought about how people said dragons were inherently lustful. If she wanted to get close to the black dragon, seduction was a great method. She immediately went to thank Sunayan because he saved her life and introduced herself as Aya, willing to offer herself to him. Sunayan sighed, and Sala still thought he couldn't even hold himself back now, mentioning that he could surrender to her beauty. However, suddenly Sala still realized that Sunayan had vanished from where he was before. He had flown away. He introduced himself, saying he always did good deeds without leaving a name, but now he intended to leave. Stalistil said it didn't matter where he went or how far he ran, she intended to kill him with her own hands eventually. Back in the Morrigan Desert, poor Kuri noticed that the desert was just ahead, and they continued walking through the sands. The desert was very dangerous, and often fierce magical beasts lurked within. It prompted Sunayan to ask more about it, and he told poor Kuri to remember the motto of his army. If they didn't explode in ferocity, they would perish just the same. Poor Kuri agreed, recognizing that it was indeed something profound. Meanwhile, in the bronze dragon's lair, a massive dragon unleashed its power. Sugnayan caught Porikuri's attention and told everyone to stop and rest a bit. Selena asked why they suddenly stopped. He thought he was smelling the pungent scent of hot metal in the air. This scent was very similar to the copper dragons he knew. He had a bad feeling about it and asked Porikuri if they could go around the area. Porikuri replied that they had found the map for the only simple and safest path through the northern part of the desert. Sugnayan understood and decided he would go investigate, leaving Anna and Porikuri there, knowing he'd return soon. As he was flying, the protagonist felt the scent growing stronger, and the power of the bronze dragon was still leaking out. When he landed, Sugnayan realized, as expected, it really was a bronze dragon there. Dragons were territorial creatures. It was a good thing he didn't let Anna and the others see any of this. But before he knew it, he saw that Selena was on his back. She seemed to have just woken up, asking if they had just arrived. Sugnayan asked why she was still there, and she replied, laughing, that she had accidentally fallen asleep on his back, but asked why they were still in the desert. Before they knew it, the bronze dragon appeared, and Selena was shocked, asking if it was perhaps a relative of his. The bronze dragon introduced himself as the Lord of the Desert and angrily questioned why Sugnayan had invaded his territory. Sugnayan explained that he and his subordinates wanted to pass through, unknowingly infringing on his territory. If possible, the protagonist asked if he could pay some gold coins as compensation for the disturbance he caused. Then the dragon replied that he wanted a fine of 100,000 gold coins and also demanded that someone be left behind to keep him company. Sugnayan was shocked that he was demanding such an amount but understood the point. Still, he wondered if that dragon was like the reincarnation system. He kept thinking it was easy to get money just to hand over to others. The dragon mentioned that the last guy hadn't spoken for 3 days and he wanted a replacement. The guy in question was a human he was holding, and Selena trembled, hoping they wouldn't look in her direction. She had no intention of staying there under any circumstances, so Sugnayan told the other dragon he could offer money, but he wouldn't leave anyone behind. Considering they were both dragons, he should just let his people pass. But the dragon remained furious. He was a mere humble 5-colored dragon and still dared compare himself to a metal dragon like him. The dragon grumbled that it really was a shame, at which point Sugnayan got ready and asked if they couldn't talk about this, ready to fight. The dragon approached laughing because it seemed like a joke. A mere little dragon like Sugnayan was challenging him. Selena asked Sugnayan to be careful as the dragon attacked immediately, and the protagonist dodged so quickly he vanished from view. Sugnayan said he was way too slow and bit the other dragon's neck as Selena prepared her companion to assist him. Sugnayan asked if she couldn't be a little more careful because she ended up trapping not just the dragon but himself in the net. But the dragon dodged in time and escaped. All of them would be annihilated under his feet, and the protagonist said the sandstorm he caused was so strong he could barely open his eyes. Just in time, Sugnayan saved Selena from being hit directly by a stone. This sand was very troublesome because they couldn't see anything clearly in this state. The dragon was using that thing made of bronze, which went beyond the scope of magic, and Sugnayan asked the system if there was any modification that could allow him to see through the yellow sand. The system said Sugnayan could exchange for the all-seeing eye, which could greatly expand his visual range and see through small objects, requiring only 70,000 points. Sugnayan didn't have much money and asked if there was another way. In that case, he could temporarily solidify the modification for 3 minutes. This would cost only 10% of the total cost, and Sugnayan told the system to hurry and do it, and then he successfully completed the modification. Now the protagonist could use the power to see through the sand for 3 minutes. They had to be quick and finish this. The dragon thought it was something special, but Sugnayan stayed quiet quickly, thinking it was powerful. But it couldn't escape the hands of the Lord of the Desert. Suddenly, he was hit directly by stones, and he wondered why they were coming back. Sugnayan laughed, asking if the dragon was hungry because he brought plenty for him, ready to throw even more stones in his direction. Sugnayan didn't even bother remembering his name because it was long, which made the dragon furious as he felt insulted. The dragon was very angry, and Sugnayan wondered what would come next. Then he realized too late that they were on top of quicksand. He couldn't grab onto anything to escape, so Selena mentioned that they were sinking and that this was a problem. When Selena woke up, she was inside a cave and screamed when a skeleton appeared above her. Meanwhile, Sugnayan also woke up coughing after all the sand had entered his body. It was a very dark place. Selena couldn't see anything, but she wondered if the dragon was still alive and started walking, asking if Sugnayan could hear her. Another skeleton grabbed her from behind as she screamed again, using her staff to push the creatures away, wondering why there were so many corpses. Selena kept walking and ended up falling. Sugnayan wondered if he heard something but thought it was just his stomach growling. He wondered how Selena was doing now. The system hadn't reported any deaths, so it seemed she should still be alive. The system said that wasn't how he should be using it anyway, and Sugnayan asked how far down he was, thinking maybe the dragon could break through the sand to the surface. The system told him to abandon the idea. This was a sea of sand. The structure was highly unstable. Doing so would only result in his death. So Sugnayan felt it was better to just keep going. There had to be an exit from that place somewhere. That's when the system detected an unknown presence ahead, and he asked if it was a dangerous presence. The system replied that it was unknown. It could be or not be dangerous. Sunayan was surprised that the system had been talking so much recently. When he looked, he saw a kind of crystal with a large serpent skull. There was a person inside the crystal. There was writing there, and Sunayan asked the system if that was the unknown presence it had mentioned. But the system didn't respond, leaving the protagonist worried that the signal might be bad. Meanwhile, Selena felt a kind of ancient magical script. It was something very rare that many mages were willing to fight over even if it meant death, so she was enchanted when she saw it. Selena felt very lucky. As a mage who studied the law, she could read the things written there with all her life's experience. It could be possible that all the corpses around were casualties far too heavy as a consequence of that magic. Selena wondered if the writings were all stained with blood. It could be some kind of death message. She saw the words danger, demon, and seal, warning not to look at Chesia Della, not to look into her eyes. Sunayan was now staring directly at Chesia and was surprised when she suddenly opened her eyes. Meanwhile, Selena continued walking and suddenly felt something entering her eyes, feeling pain. The whole cave began to shake and they didn't know what was happening. And suddenly Selena found herself falling through the ground, landing right on top of Sunayan. Selena immediately felt warmth and realized it was coming from Sunayan, who was beneath her for some reason. She ran over and hugged him, relieved because she had finally reunited with him, which increased her favorability by 50 points. He asks how she fell from above, and Selena says that after being dragged by quicksand, she ended up in the sand cave above. Inside, she found many corpses of friends and necromancers registered in the ancient dark magic of the place. Sunayan became curious and asked if there was a way out, and unfortunately she said no, but mentioned she found something written by a wizard before he died. He wrote that there was a demon sealed there, and Sunayan points to the girl in the crystal, asking if by any chance they were talking about her. No wonder she was sealed in ice crystals. Now Selena could see that what was written before was indeed true. The countless corpses of the mages above were very likely all caused by her. Selena sighs because everything would be fine as long as Sunayan absolutely doesn't make eye contact with her. Nothing should happen. At that moment, the protagonist froze and hypothetically asked what could happen if he did that. She asked, somewhat shocked, if he had actually done something forbidden by accident, and soon after the girl's crystal cracked and both of them were startled. A great power was coming from that girl. She even broke through Sunayan's defensive scales. The girl smiled because she was finally free and asked who was there while Sunayan and Selena hid. The system detected a special female NPC and said he should pursue a relationship with her. Sunayan was shocked because the system was still appearing and only said those completely impossible things. The system said he should believe in himself, that it would withdraw for now and he could call it if he needed anything. It didn't take long for the demon to find the two of them, and Sunayan told her to run, so they hurried away from her. Meanwhile, the bronze dragon was on his throne when he heard that the black dragon still had an army in his territory. It was a joke. Sunayan was dead, and the low-level monsters in his army probably didn't even know it. Suddenly, they felt an earthquake and a huge bone creature appeared on the surface, where Anna recognized it as the direction Sunayan had gone. Her heart was uneasy, and she hoped he wouldn't get into trouble while he was there. In the desert, Sunayan confirmed that the girl was indeed an SS-rank NPC, and she asked why they were running since she didn't intend to eat them. The power of that woman was terrifying. Even in a weakened state, she escaped effortlessly from the underground sea of sand. The woman sat on Sunayan, mentioning that his scales were indeed perfect and comfortable to use. The tingling sensation made him wonder if the woman was coveting his body or something like that, but he had no intention of giving in. The girl said it was all the fault of those damn wizards who coveted her pet snake and suggested that Sunayan become her new pet. She could call him Lom Lom, and he was shocked because it seemed like the remains of the previous snake he saw in the cave had belonged to her. Sunayan could imagine himself obeying her orders, which didn't seem so bad, but then he stood up saying he was a dragon. This caused her to fall hard into the sand. Disobedience was not good for a pet, and her favorability dropped by 10 points. Sunayan was shocked and wondered what had happened. He never knew someone's favorability could drop like that. The system responded that Sunayan's conquest target was quite dangerous. Favorability would be very unstable until reaching the first stage. He narrowly dodged her attacks, and even the bronze dragon froze in shock seeing his lair suddenly catch fire and be destroyed. The bronze dragon pointed at the demon in fury, angry because Sunayan was still alive and even got help to destroy his lair with his own hands. Sunayan wondered if he could even believe what he was seeing, because the girl clearly wasn't helping at all. But if he was insisting, it couldn't be helped, and the girl ended up becoming Sunayan's boss. If the dragon had the courage, he would have to go through her first. But Sunayan advised that the bronze dragon couldn't win even if he tried, and the dragon was in disbelief because he thought he could dump the responsibility on her. Even so, he intended to show who the real dragon lord there was. Sunayan asked him not to be impulsive. But it was too late, and he sighed because young ones really never listened when they were advised. The girl asked if he also wanted to become her pet and saw the dragon attacking her right away. The dragon tore off the bronze dragon's arm to the delight of Sunayan and Selena, but the demon was furious because the dragon had courted death. She said she wanted obedient pets, especially the ugly ones, who should immediately yield to her will. Suddenly, the dragon became unable to move, and Sunayan asked the system if there was a way to calm the girl down. The The system said the protagonist could form a forced contract, but it would require sacrificing a part of his body as a vessel. Sugnayan asked how many system points were needed to form the forced pact, and the system said it wasn't expensive, only 1,000 system points. However, once the formation was generated, the contracted target had to remain inside it. Otherwise, the formation would fail and the system points would not be refunded. The demon continued beating the bronze dragon to the point he was begging for help, and Selena asked the protagonist if they couldn't take the chance to run away. But when she looked, Sugnayan had disappeared, shocked because he had run away so quickly and hadn't even said goodbye to her. The demon turned around upon sensing great heat and smiled, commenting that she had thought he ran away after what happened. She asked Sugnayan if he had really decided to become her pet, and he replied that the word escape had never existed in his dictionary. Selena mentioned that if he was trying to escape, he went in the wrong direction, especially since Sugnayan ended up being pinned down by the woman. He told Della to let him go. Since he freed her, she should defeat him with her own hands and take care of everything. Della found it curious that Sugnayan would act that way, but it was exactly the kind of dignity she wanted in the pet she chose. Della sent the bronze dragon flying away, and Sugnayan asked if he was okay, to which he replied yes and thanked him for the help. The protagonist said there was no need to thank him and handed over a piece of paper, just to remind him to pay the ransom properly. When he looked, Sugnayan had asked for billions in gold coins, to the point it made the dragon faint, while the protagonist said it shouldn't be a big deal for him. When he turned around, he saw Della preparing to attack, warning him not to get distracted, and she attacked while Sugnayan dodged by flying. Selena warned him to watch his back, and he saw Della quickly approaching from behind. The protagonist told the system to summon the contract formation, and the system agreed to his request. Sugnayan successfully activated the compulsory contract formation, costing 1,000 system points with a generation time of 10 minutes. Sugnayan only had to trap her inside the formation for 10 minutes, so he grabbed Della's whip in his mouth and pulled her down so she would fall, then pinned her underneath him as Della noticed the existence of a formation under her body. She laughed and asked if he really thought he could trap her with something like that, and used her powers to shoot a whip to capture Selena. It was a snake that emerged from the ground to attack her, and Sugnayan continued, calculating that only 19 seconds were left. Selena was on the ground begging because she didn't want to die, just as the system congratulated Sugnayan because the contract had been formed. Suddenly, the protagonist grabbed the serpent and threw it far away, saving Selena's life, but in the process, the formation ended up breaking. It was a pity because he almost managed to achieve what he wanted, but Selena was relieved that he was really there. Her favorability increased by 8 points, reaching the 3rd stage of favorability, acquiring the special ability Sonic Gas, and 5,000 more system points. Sugnayan flew off, telling Selena to quickly hide in a safe place and stop crying because he would handle things with the demon. Selena thought he was really cool. In fact, there was nothing wrong with humans and dragons being together, and she agreed with his request before running away. She ran off, and Sugnayan wondered if she was really scared, unaware that Selena was actually a little moved by the situation. But on the way, she ended up tripping over the hand of a skeleton, which had a gold ring on the hand of the wizard who wrote the bloody warning on the stone tablet. Della didn't expect Sugnayan, a dragon, to also know about human contract formations. Even the simplest formations require time and power, and her current power was far from enough to make it work. She attacked the protagonist, saying that it would be good if her pets were very obedient, and since he was disobedient, he would have to rest his scales so she could make new skin for her snake. Sugnayan shrinks back, asking her to wait so they could talk a bit about it, and Della prepares to tear the scales from his body. Then she realizes a new power has enveloped her. It was the confinement technique of the dead mage, and she recognized it immediately. Della is confused as to how something like that could appear there, when 1,000 years ago, they were all exterminated by her hands. As he turns around, the protagonist sees that it was Selena using the powers through the ring of the deceased mage. She tells Sugnayan to hurry as she couldn't hold on much longer, and Sugnayan shouts for the system to activate the contract formation. The system agrees, and the protagonist successfully activates the contract formation, costing his 1,000 points but requesting another 10 minutes. Della realizes she's being dragged into the formation again and complains because she didn't want to be imprisoned again. The system alerts that the capture was a success and the formation was generated. He could now choose a sacrifice to finalize it. Sugnayan is surprised as a sacrifice was required, and he asks if the receptacle could just be a part of his body. He wanted to offer one of his claws, and the system responds that a claw is merely keratin. Unless he uses his entire limb and his dragon horns as the receptacle, it won't work. Sugnayan then decides to use his left hand, and the contract is successfully signed. Thus, Della becomes his servant. Selena celebrates with the protagonist because they managed to accomplish what they had to do, and she removes the ring after realizing there was something she hadn't done. Sugnayan asks what that was, and she replies that the ring of that necromancer must have belonged to the previous necromancer. There was residual energy from his body in the ring, and thanks to it, she could use the necromancer's confinement techniques. Sunayan sees her returning the ring and asks why she didn't keep it. He thought she was born to become a necromancer. Selena says she killed a strong necromancer's assistant, even if it wasn't harmful. That kind of magic wasn't her goal. She couldn't exactly say it was because she was afraid of corpses and the undead that she gave up. At that moment, Sunayan realizes he had forgotten something, then hears Anna arriving and calling out their names. The protagonist is surprised and asks why she's there, and Anna says she heard he was in trouble, so she immediately led the Beast Legion to the location. Sunayan asks who told her such things, and Anna whispers that it was the other great dragon, whom she had encountered on the way. Sunayan realizes what he had forgotten and talks to the other dragon, Rolls-Royce, about how he still owed him 10 billion gold coins. Royce felt that this was clearly a tyrannical demand, but Sunayan replies that it couldn't be helped. It was a tradition of the dragon clan, and gives him two choices now: become his new subordinate, follow him, work, and pay off the debt, or he would just become new material for Sunayan. He would strip every piece from him and turn it into equipment, take his heart and everything else. Royce is shocked that the protagonist intends to kill him just like that, even though he's a dragon under the protection of the Dragon League. If Sunayan kills him now, he'll be hunted by all the dragons who are part of the Great Dragon League. That turn was new to the protagonist, who asks what this Dragon League is, as he had never heard of it. Royce replies that there are many dragons, but very few overall. At the end of times, the dragon birth rate was beginning to fall more and more. When Dragon Island was discovered for the first time, there weren't even 100 dragons left, and he asks if Sunayan knows what that means. If things continue like this, dragons will be extinct in the future. More than 1,000 years ago, there were nearly 10,000 dragons on that island. Royce discovered that their dragons had extremely long growth cycles. Dragons usually sleep for long periods. Although their bodies might appear ordinary, their materials were extremely valuable and rare in the world. But humanity discovered Dragon Island and decided to kill them all to become rich. They sent people to dig out dragon hearts and cut off their heads to take home and put on display for all to see. Dragons were made of first-rate materials, so not a single bit of their bodies could be wasted. Royce also saw his parents being killed by those same humans, and more dragon slayers kept appearing. And their living space became smaller and smaller. Royce's siblings were killed one after another until only he remained. His mother and father also perished at the hands of dragon slayers. They bought time and took his siblings to the kingdom of Anlius. But the dragon slayers continued to pursue them relentlessly, killing his brothers and sisters until only he was left, and he fled to the Dragon Protection League. The Dragon Protection League was founded by an adult Crimson Dragon and an adult Silver Dragon, with the goal of protecting the last remaining dragons of that world. Regardless of whether they were metal dragons or five-colored dragons, as long as they followed the League's rules, they could join and receive its blessing. Under its protection currently, no other five-colored dragon was willing to join or even showed any interest. Thus, the order was given to kill those arrogant and foolish dragon slayers who destroyed their homeland and shattered their peace. They fought and slept non-stop, and that was why he was warning Sunayan about it. If he wanted to kill him, he could expect to be caught by the Dragon League and be forced to eat slugs every day for what he had done. The protagonist felt that couldn't even be called a threat and pressured Royce to stop whining so much. After all, he was still giving him two choices: either become his subordinate and follow him, or perish. Sunayan intended to seal his mouth forever, preventing him from speaking and making him eat slugs every single day without stopping. Royce immediately bowed to become his servant, but the oath had to be made to Mother Tiamat of 5 colors and to the god Bahamut. So he didn't intend to shut his mouth or make him eat slugs. Sunayan swore nonetheless in the name of all. If Royce swore loyalty to him, he wouldn't seal his mouth or make him eat slugs, just as he himself had said. Royce declared that he agreed with the terms of the contract, and thus he became Sunayan's new subordinate. Later, Sunayan flew far away carrying Anna and found in his hand a crack that must have been the signature of the contract he made earlier with Della. The system said that due to unknown reasons, his exposure had decreased again, which caught him completely by surprise. When Anna woke up, she asked if something had gone wrong, and he replied no, he had just been bitten by a mosquito. He told her to keep sleeping well, but Anna leaned in and kissed Sunayan on the cheek, to her surprise. She laughed, mentioning that now the mosquito bite wouldn't hurt anymore, wishing the dragon good night before falling asleep again. Sunayan tried to hold himself back, feeling it was a shame he couldn't transform into his human form quickly right now when he wanted to. Back at Sakura Village number 2, Sunayan asked the system if that was really a beginner's village. It looked like a huge city. Compared to the previous Sakura Villages 1 and 6, this village was gigantic and didn't even compare. The system replied that this happened because the beginner villages near the Silver Moon Forest had been targeted by Sunayan. The one he saw now was the normal development speed for players, which surprised him. It seemed there were more beginner villages like this, or even stronger and more perfect ones, and the system agreed. As planetary settlers, players must first expand their own forces and prioritize local construction to be able to protect themselves. In other words, the beginner villages there were like invasive species without natural enemies in reality. Outside the bushes near Sakura Village 1, Portakuri returned to report that the ammunition was ready. Tsunayan and he pinched their noses from the stench of what Portakuri was holding. It was a newly developed ultra-spicy dung bomb. Its power was 10 times stronger than common poisonous gas bombs used against enemies. Tsunayan thought it was good that he had made progress, but next time he could just remove the smell so things wouldn't be so chaotic. The protagonist flew off, ordering everyone to attack. All the monsters would throw the ultra-spicy dung bombs at the village. They attacked the village and invaded through the gates, and inside people were running in surprise because the monsters were suddenly invading. The guards didn't understand what it was that was being thrown and wondered if it was poisonous gas. Unable to do anything, they would quickly report to the master. Tsunayan told Royce to follow him and breathe dragon breath toward the center of the human village. Royce says it would be a bit bad. Those humans hadn't provoked them, but he still didn't understand the reason they needed to kill those people. If those were the only ones who started the problem, they could kill them and their outrage would be understandable, and Tsunayan calls him a fool. She questions whether he even knew the reason why there were fewer and fewer dragons in the world, and Royce asks why, looking confused. Tsunayan replies that it was obviously because of the humans. They invaded their living space and destroyed the environment. They even killed many of their brothers along the way, taking dragon hearts, enjoying tiger bones soaked in wine with their meals. And they created more powerful and luxurious equipment. If they let those people go, they would bring dragon slayers back to the nest. They would display a sack of gold on his corpse, loudly celebrating the victory they had and justifying it as if it were normal. Royce remembers how he felt when he saw the fall of his hometown and fills with rage, stating that they truly deserved death. Tsunayan agrees, and as he comes to his senses, she tells him to join her in massacring the human village, and so they manage to attack the village immediately. People run in shock as two dragons appear approaching and attack with fire from all sides. People scream, asking all the mage players to prepare so they can retaliate and defend. One of the players points out that they should protect the warriors first and then immediately cast their most powerful magic. Two mage players were supposed to cast magic to slow down the dragons, and mages run closer to unleash their attacks. The female mages tell the master that those dragons had very high resistance to elemental magic. The slowing magic wouldn't have much effect. The village master wonders why two dragons are suddenly attacking them by surprise on a random day. Another player approaches, saying that a few days ago, Walvoli seemed to have taken some people to attack the Black Dragon. They wondered if that was the Black Dragon coming back to take revenge for what had happened. The boy, who was Waldoli's son, wonders if his father failed. It was no wonder they hadn't heard anything from his parents since then. But he didn't need to worry. He would do everything possible to make sure his father was properly avenged. He shouts to the warrior players that the ability to kill the dragon would now depend entirely on them. He orders the men to throw their spears at the dragons in the sky at a 45-degree angle, preparing for a full-force throw. After a countdown, they launch their spears, and Tsunayan uses her ability to disarm them all. The spears fall, and the players are shocked at how such a thing could be possible, and the master again orders everyone to stack their shields. However, he ends up seeing players running, begging for help, and trying to save themselves from the falling spears and fire. There was no time to wait, and they needed to save themselves before they could attack, and Royce calls them fools. He then points out that he discovered something. The humans seem incapable of dying even after being attacked. He saw with his own eyes a guy he had crushed come out of a small room shortly after the time he had killed him. Tsunayan says that since he noticed that it was time to tell the truth about those humans, the world they were in now was not the only one that existed. Beyond this world, there were many others, and as someone who possesses the dragon's legacy, Royce should understand that. He was surprised to hear that those humans could come from another world, and meanwhile, the mages were trying to fight the fire from the attacks. The mage tells the young master that those two giant dragons were too powerful. They couldn't kill them. They should escape to another beginner village. The boy asks if there was another novice village nearby, and the mage replies that there was a village of the Asen faction not far from there. Although it didn't appear on the map, it must be a hidden attribute, and the boy says they couldn't wait, they had to leave. She asked about the others in the village, but he couldn't care less about what they would do now. It wasn't like they were going to die for real. As long as they were alive, they would be fine. They could just rebuild the novice village after the dragons leave. And the mage agrees. The two run from the second village as it becomes more destroyed than before. The boy becomes angry seeing this and promises he would return, and the mage asks him to hurry. Their invisibility potion would only last 10 minutes. Later, the protagonist found the stone that remained from the village and tells Royce that as he could see, those humans were not from this world and had come to invade. If the invasion succeeded, their world would be sidelined in a dangerous situation or even completely destroyed. That was why Tsunayan had to attack the humans. Besides, each of the humans held a class. The way they improved their strength was even simpler. They just had to kill monsters, and Royce understands that everyone was in great danger. The protagonist asks him to calm down a little, not knowing if that guy was really a dragon being so useless and cowardly. Tsunayan didn't know how the other places were holding out, but she knew she had to gather all the monsters there. Therefore, they would destroy the human villages from another world and build a monster city themselves to be able to defend. And that was quite important. Royce asks what the jewel Sunayan was holding was, and Sunayan says it was something special that could help them build with special functions that could only be obtained by destroying human villages, so she says they should all unite to fight for that treasure. They would truly unite to build a city for monsters and drive away the invaders before more was taken from them. Royce states he is willing to become her follower and swears in the name of the dragon god Bahamut that he would follow Sunayan to her death. Wherever his dragon breath passed, scorched earth would be left behind by him, and Royce's admiration increased by 300 points. The protagonist says he looks forward to that day, but before that, everyone had to work hard to become stronger. The system congratulates him for completely destroying the novice village. His exposure increased again. Sunayan was relieved to see this, but fortunately, a new world boss had appeared, so he didn't have to worry about players coming after him again for now. Anna appeared running, saying that Porikuri discovered that 2 people had secretly escaped, and someone should be sent to chase them right away. Sunayan asks her to wait a bit. He didn't intend to pursue them yet. He could ask someone to follow them secretly and see where they were going. Meanwhile, in Novice Village 34, the players were angry because if it weren't for the Black Dragon suddenly showing up, it wouldn't be in that chaos. Maybe that beauty should be his, but it didn't take long for those same 2 players to see their village being destroyed by the dragon and Anna. At that moment, the player looked at his leader asking if they were doomed, and he couldn't even believe their village ended up like that. They saw the monsters attacking and ordered a retreat immediately, but even so, the others wondered why they were running when they could just revive. The leader hit the player who questioned him, calling him a fool because he should have read the most recent strategy list that came out. Some Sekiro players died of hunger in the corner of the World Plaza because the resurrection time was too long and they had no food or water. That made the players scared and they immediately ran for their lives. It talked about how Sunayan was the same one who threw them into the river some time ago. Those were the Indian players who attacked Salastil, but were defeated by the Black Dragon, and still they couldn't understand how their village was found. Just when they were leaving and arguing, Salastil suddenly appeared to surprise them in the middle of their escape. The players smiled because they met the girl from before, and she asked where he said the Black Dragon was. The player didn't know what was so interesting about the dragon when it could be much better to go with them. Annoyed, she just hit them and the players begged for mercy, and Salastil asks again if they could take her to see Sunayan. Meanwhile, inside the village, Sunayan was congratulated by the system because he destroyed another novice village and also acquired the core fragment. His exposure increased again. If he continued destroying novice villages, he would be marked as a world boss. The system acknowledges that Sunayan destroyed 2 novice villages in a row and received 200,000 system points. Finally, he had successfully collected 4 core fragments from the novice village. It wasn't easy walking in circles like that, though it wasn't easy at all to keep going. They were practically walking in circles, but Celestia was grateful for that because she didn't even think she'd see him again so soon. This evil dragon was very fierce. It seemed she would need to find the right opportunity to approach him. Then she decided to approach some players and hide in the woods, then scream for help loudly enough for everyone to see her. Sunayan wondered what that sound was and landed just in time for Salastil to scream that the dragon was right above her. He ended up apologizing because it was unintentional, and she replies that it was fine, thinking she was surprised because he was polite. Still, Salastil believed he was pretending to apologize. She intended to rip off his hypocritical mask, and thanks him for saving her, saying she would follow and serve him. But Sunayan was surprised because all her stats were unknown. Salastil was happy with his reaction, thinking that using her beauty to get close to a dragon was the best, gain his trust, and then kill him. It would be the perfect plan. Still, she was making poses that left Sunayan completely confused. He wanted to stay far away from that unknown creature. But when he turned around, he noticed the players from the other village and realized they were the same guys who had tried to cause trouble for the girl before. The players immediately surrendered. They didn't want to offend him and offered her as his meal since she was much tastier than them. Sunayan was furious, calling them humble insects after all. They didn't even offer any chance to bargain with him to begin with. They dared to contaminate the dragon's palate with their filthy bodies as if they were even remotely tasty. It was unforgivable. The player begs him to wait. They could offer their treasures. They could also provide information that might interest him. Sunayan asks what treasures and information they had, allowed them to speak, or they would burn to death. And the guy says that he certainly must like delicious food and refined flavors. Each dish from their family went through 1,000 stages of fermentation. It was clean and hygienic, but Sunayan burns his curry rice without any mercy, saying he would give 3 seconds to say everything he knew. Otherwise, he would burn all of them until they were crispy, and the player bows and talks about the Worm King. It was a monstrous creature that came out of the Western Sea, destroyed 4 villages near the Angsi village, and this had been heard for some time. They said that Worm Kingdom was attacking the coasts of the Airland Empire, and many other human villages would end up suffering. The protagonist sighs because their information was useless. He only wanted to know where the gold and their treasures were. If they didn't know anything, he could only burn them to death, and the man claims to know something, asking him to wait a bit. Then he tells the Great Dragon that the Stormworm King had been causing chaos and attracting many adventurers through the teleportation matrix to hunt it. These adventurers were from all over the world, each possessing extraordinary skills and powerful items. But compared to Sunayan, that Storm Worm King and those adventurers were nothing to be compared. He just needed to wait for them to fight to the death and then reap the rewards, and Sunayan paused to think about that. The Storm Worm King must have been the one marked in the 4 novice villages, one more than before. If not for the system's reminder, he would have been completely annihilated. Now this player must be marking the world boss. Sunayan acknowledges that this was good information and asks if there was anything else useful to say. And he replies that there was nothing else. The Great Dragon should understand that they had nothing more to offer at the moment. But they could provide more information if it became possible in the future, and suddenly the system issues an alert. It was detected that a player reached level 30, the realism of the world increased, and with that, all players would now experience a 10% increase in pain reception. Sunayan didn't understand why the player was suddenly screaming and asks if he was trying to hide something. That's when Sunayan also received the notification informing him that players were now experiencing increased pain in their bodies, and he understood that they could now feel pain when they died. So long as players could suffer, it was a significant weakening. It seemed that even more interesting things could end up being unlocked in the future, and the player begins to stutter. He says that he suddenly remembered something, but there was nothing to hide because he had always been very honest. And Sunayan agrees that it was good. He was a great dragon and would be true to his word. He wouldn't burn him to death. But he presses the other 2 players, asking what they thought about it. He only said he wouldn't burn them, but made no promises about other things. Celestial becomes tense seeing that the true nature of the evil dragon was being revealed before her eyes. It didn't take long for Anna and Selena to appear, and Celestial is surprised, not understanding why those 2 girls were by his side. It was obvious they were under some kind of hypnosis and needed to be saved. Anna says she was dirty and wanted to take a bath to go back home. Sunayan thinks it would indeed be a good opportunity and tells Anna to inform Porikuri so they can leave for home right away. But Celestial paused for a moment, asking to be taken with him. She was willing to offer her greatest treasure for that purpose. The other girls became furious, saying they had been cleaning the battlefield all this time and he had stayed there seducing girls behind their backs. Sunayan quickly says he was being wronged and it wasn't at all what they were trying to make it seem. He asks the system if there was a way to get rid of Celestial, and it replies that he could release sleeping gas. For ordinary people, the time it would take to wake up should be enough to return to the dragon's lair. But the system warns to be careful when releasing the sleeping gas, and Sunayan just says to release it quickly. When he realized it, he had actually farted out of nowhere, and Sunayan questions what that was to the system. The system says that since Sunayan doesn't have cutaneous gland tissue to release the gas, it had to be expelled that way. The protagonist went into shock, asking why it hadn't said that earlier. He lost all of his dragon dignity after that embarrassing scene. The system asks if he wants to use 4 novice village core fragments to synthesize a main village construction order. If that were the case, after obtaining the main village construction order, he would have the authority to establish a novice village. Sunayan uses the synthesis, and so he manages to complete the full synthesis, congratulating him for obtaining the novice monster village core. Now it also asks him to select the type of novice village, and several options were made available. The first was the primary fortress, the second the primary dragon's nest, and the third would be the primary dungeon. Sunayan says the dungeon didn't seem very good. Spending so much effort every day just to enter and leave the dungeon was a waste of time. And not seeing the sun every day could be a problem. It would be easier for their immunity to drop and they would get sick. The system tells the protagonist that he can build a teleportation matrix inside the dungeon, which would allow him and his monsters to enter and exit the dungeon. All with ease, he would just need to pay system points to build it. Besides that, the dungeon was not completely dark. The sunlight mirror could collect simulated sunlight, so they could make use of it. So Sunayan chose to build a dungeon, and the system asks him to choose an entrance for it. As for the entrance, he says they could place it inside his dragon's nest. If any player or hero attacks, he could directly deal with them. When a great tremor occurs inside the lair, Anna becomes worried and asks Sunayan if it was an earthquake, and if they should take shelter somewhere. And Sunayan replies that there's no need to take shelter. This was their new home and was just being renovated to be completed soon. And Anna asks if he intended to simply forget the previous home. They should just go somewhere else to hide. And Sunayan receives a notification that the dungeon construction was completed. He could now teleport all the monsters inside. And he agrees to the teleportation. At that moment, everyone was teleported into the dungeon, wondering what was happening and if it was some kind of attack. Sunayan appears in the dungeon too, and the system presents that this would be the palace where the dungeon lord resides. While in the palace, Sunayan's overall stats would increase by 50%, and there were also some available functions. The first was Palace Guard. When his guard is within 500 meters of the King's Hall, their overall stats would increase by 20%. Anna and Royce would have functions that had not yet been unlocked. Upgrading to the second level Dark King's Palace would require 100,000 system points, and also 8 core fragments from novice villages or even 2 fragments from novice cities, and the protagonist stopped to think about the palace guards. That kind of resembled the elite chief guardians found inside other common dungeons. Sunayan asks the system why he could only appoint those 2 as palace guards and not other monsters. The system says that the life levels of the other monsters had not yet reached the minimum requirements to become palace guards. But Sunayan can arrange for other monsters if he wanted to add more, and he decides to temporarily assign palace guard duty to Royce. He becomes confused by what happened because he suddenly felt a great power within him and wonders if he was about to evolve or something like that. After a moment, the protagonist reconsiders because that guy didn't seem very trustworthy and decides to forget about it for now. He could go out to check other parts of the dungeon first and inspect Oronuri, the level 1 goblin nest. The production efficiency of goblins would increase by 100%, the maturation period increased by 50%, and the combat power of newborns by 20%. The level 1 kobold nest had its production efficiency increased by 20%, maturation period reduced by 20%. The combat power of newly born kobolds would also be increased by the same 20%. There was also the level 1 water nest. The production efficiency of bird demons was increased by 50%. The maturation period was reduced by 100%. The combat power of newly born bird demons increased by 20%. These seemed to be just nests for various monsters, nothing unusual. They were capable of forming combat power in a short amount of time. There was also the painful black prison, where monsters imprisoned in the black prison would continuously suffer mental torment and pain, with the pain level increasing by 5% each day. There was also the level 1 rebirth pool, where the host could spend system points to revive common monsters. The level 1 dark wheat field, where the harvest maturation speed would increase by 100%. The dark underground river produced an abundant supply of cold underground water that could be consumed directly. Sugnayan felt that the painful black prison, the rebirth pool, and the dark wheat field were much more amazing than that dragon nest from before. He was happy to have chosen the basic dragon nest. Judging by the usual behavior of the system, most of the functions of the basic nest were meant to serve dragons. There was also the possibility of increasing dragon pregnancy and the survival rate of dragon eggs. The system detects that Sunayan has built his own monster-gathering site, and the coordinates of this meeting place could be hidden. He could also hide the meeting place for 1 week, after which the location would appear on the map of all players. Sunayan questions what kind of system it was because earlier, when he said he wanted to take care of the novice village, it kept denying him all the time. That was because it would cause him to be marked as a world boss. Now that he finally built the underground city, it was trying to expose him. If it's going to be exposed in 7 days, there would be no difference between that and becoming a world boss anyway. The system responds that it was inevitable because the novice village core fragments were, after all, products of the rules. But after the dungeon is exposed, Sunayan will not be marked as a world boss, nor will a teleportation matrix be unlocked. He will also have new resources. Despite being irritated, he stopped when he heard about the new resources and asks what that meant. Could it be that the existence of a black dragon like him was simply meant to be endlessly farmed by players and natives? He decides he would hide the dungeon and deal with things one day at a time. He didn't want to be bothered constantly by those guys. The system understands that the dungeon will be hidden. It was detected that there were currently 5 arrow towers that were not placed inside the dungeon, and it asks whether the arrow towers should be transferred. Sumayan reflects on what he should do and asks about the teleportation matrix that was promised. The system says that to build a teleportation matrix, 20,000 points were required, and the current dungeon level could only construct a one-way teleportation matrix. It asks whether it should build one now, and Sunayan orders it to build one immediately and take all his money at once, still furious with all of it. Meanwhile, Anna and Selena were walking together, and Selena hides when she's startled by what seemed like a ghost, but Anna assures her it was just a shadow. Meanwhile, the protagonist saw the system indicating that in the Shadow Labyrinth, magical creatures have their combat effectiveness increased by 10%. They'd also gain the imperceptible status when standing still, and Sunayan orders Porikuri to move to the corner and occupy the station without moving. Once that was done, Porikuri disappears and Selena is shocked to see what was happening. Anna comments that it was strange that he suddenly disappeared even though he was still there. In the underground of the labyrinth, the protagonist replies that it was normal for that to happen because that way they couldn't be found. This was a special ability of the Shadow Labyrinth. Any monster that stayed there for 5 seconds would become invisible and undetectable. Porikuri is impressed with the new powerful function of the labyrinth and suggests something new with an idea. They could set traps in the Shadow Labyrinth and send some monsters to guard it. That way, they could stop a large number of enemies using only the Dark Labyrinth, and Sunayan feels that, as expected, he was a master of strategies. The protagonist agrees that it was a good idea, deciding to leave that matter in his hands. Besides, he could move the potatoes to the dark wheat field, and orders the human soldiers to cultivate them. He could take the disobedient prisoners to the painful black prison. They should be locked there for 10 days, and then they would decide how to deal with them, and Porikuri agrees with his orders. Sunayan says that after trading for the golden fruit, he should reserve 5,000 remaining system points to organize the most economical and powerful enhancement plan for him. One that could further increase his strength, and the system replies that based on solidification, it would provide the most suitable enhancement plan, and it would adapt to Sunayan's current abilities and physical needs. It recommended Advanced Muscle Enhancement, which costs 10,000 points, and Beginner Swarm Willpower, which costs 100,000 points, as well as the Golden Fruit, which also costs 100,000 points. Reserving 5,000 system points, Sunayan currently had 44,995 system points left. Sunayan says he was about to evolve now, and Anna asks if it was really going to happen that quickly. Still, she assures him that it would be fine this time, she would protect him, and asks him to sleep deeply without worry. He says he didn't need to sleep for evolution, but it could be a lengthy and somewhat intense process. Sunayan suggests that she go to the other side first. He was afraid he might scare Anna if she saw it. However, Anna refuses. She would stay right there and didn't intend to go anywhere. It was said that dragon evolution was quite dangerous and accidents could happen. That's why Anna promises she would protect Sunayan there. In that case, he thanks her and asks her to stay by his side. But while evolving, something terrifying might happen. She should stay away because he was afraid of hurting her. Anna agrees and steps back, and Sunayan tells the system to begin. So the system tells the protagonist to know that the enhancement would be comprehensive. It could involve several organs throughout the body and would be accompanied by intense pain. To avoid accidents, the system would seal his vocal cords and remove his limbs. The transformation would begin immediately and tells him to prepare. Sunayan froze when he heard about removing his limbs, but realizes that his limbs were starting to stop moving, and he collapsed to the ground to Anna's concern. He was in a lot of pain and asks if the system couldn't just knock him out to end it. The system agrees, but it would cost 1,000 system points, and Sunayan agrees since it could be considered anesthesia. Finally, he falls asleep and a second later wakes up, unable to believe he spent 1,000 points just to blink. The system asks him not to panic as an external force was what made him wake up suddenly. It was Anna's powers. She was using healing magic, and Sunayan mentally wanted to make her stop, but he couldn't make any sounds. Suddenly, Sunayan realizes he was in a place where there were several white threads around him and tries to touch them, asking what they were. When he touched one, he was able to hear the thoughts of a kobold who was happy because he could eat potatoes that day. He was happy because it was thanks to Sunayan that they could eat delicious things. He could only think about the potatoes that day. Now Sunayan could understand that that particular thread was connected to the consciousness of that guard. The system says he established a connection with an affiliated unit and could connect with up to 999 more. To connect with more units, he could continue upgrading the will of the swarm. Now he could better understand the situation. There was only that amount, so he had to be careful and use it only to contact the elite. Sunayan asks the system where Porokuri's line was, and at that moment he was able to see his thoughts about him and a kobold girl. But at the same moment Sunayan took consciousness inside Porokuri's body, he saw her lean in to kiss him and backed away in shock. That feeling didn't seem right at all. It looked like the will of the swarm didn't just let him hear the thoughts and ideas of those monsters, but it could also even infiltrate his will and control his body, and the system says that Porokuri was also added to the line. He inherited about 0.1% of his attributes based on the concentration of the bloodline and obtained the inherited skill Iron Armor. Sunayan was surprised because they were actually getting more powerful all at once. As the degree of the dragon's transformation increased, the concentration followed. Although this improvement had an upper limit, the advantage was that it was no longer necessary to apply heart blood to Porokuri and other dependents. Moving on to the next ones, he connected with the fire rabbit, with Hana, with a jackal, and several others. Many monsters were linked. Later, Sunayan finally woke up to Anna's relief, but he immediately saw that she was suffering from magical exhaustion after using so much healing. The protagonist had drained his own magic as well and couldn't do anything for her now, so he asks her to rest alone after a while. Della's favorability suddenly increased by 20 points, and Sunayan was completely confused about what had just happened. He asks why that happened, and the system explains that when Sunayan advanced, his contract with her evolved along with her body. He never knew that would happen. It almost felt like he had been parasitized by Della in that sense, and he asks if it could be potentially dangerous. The system says that as long as the contract was in effect, there would be no danger. Theoretically, only when Sunayan died would the contract end. This makes him irritated because it almost seemed like a curse until death, but now he could proceed to the final stage. Besides Anna, Royce had not received the inheritance. Since he was a dragon, he should choose the type of ability he wanted to inherit. Meanwhile, Royce was busy chatting away with his new human friend. He was the first to hear everything Royce had to say. The beginning of all the stories started with a bronze dragon, and the human kept wondering if someone could shut him up because he didn't even want to listen. Royce gets annoyed because when listening to a story, one should look him in the eye as a basic form of respect. That's when Sunayan arrived, and Royce was happy that he had time to come over, but suddenly got startled because Sunayan's aura had become stronger. The protagonist feels that indeed, after that transformation and the previous massacre of 2 novice villages, his level had reached 38. He thought he would enter the stage of a young dragon after 3 more levels. He was one step closer to shapeshifting, and then he could be with Anna again. Changing the subject, Sunayan coughs and says he was there because he wanted Royce to make a choice. He touches the connection thread with Royce, who didn't understand what those things were, but they were all new abilities. He asks him to choose what he would like to have, and the system reminds Sunayan to pay attention because Royce was a pure-blood dragon. Although he could inherit his abilities, the effects would be significantly reduced and the improvement limited. Royce says he already had iron armor as a dragon. As for dragon breath, his sleep breath and linear breath, one for control and the other for attack, were quite practical. So there was no need to alter any of them. He decides to enhance muscle strength among all the options. He could become stronger, and he wasn't saying he wanted to be as big and strong as Sunayan, but even a third of that would be good. Royce chooses his power and evolves, thanking Sunayan because he felt his strength had practically doubled thanks to it. He thought that if there were a thunder giant in front of him, he would be confident in fighting it hand-to-hand. Sunayan replies that it really wasn't bad. He was now one of the main combat forces of his dungeon. He'd hoped he would keep working hard, be strict with himself, and design his house. Then he walks away. Still, Royce didn't understand why he had left without even hearing what a thunder giant was. But the protagonist ignores him and walks away, thinking it was a good thing he left in time. If he had stayed longer, Royce's endless words would have taken even more of his time. At least his level went up, so he couldn't leave even if he wanted to now. It was better to go back and check on how Anna was doing. Meanwhile, in the palace of Anlius, the king was feeling all anxious. It had been a long time, but still he hadn't heard anything more about the Black Dragon. The envoy would soon return, asking for more people after all. The queen sighs and hits the king, telling him to calm down, which left him a bit shocked, so she opts to ask more gently for him to calm down. She posted notices all over the country to select brave warriors who dared to wield their swords against the dragon. She declared that slaying the evil dragon would save the princess, and the victorious heroes would marry the princess and gain wealth and status. The king doesn't understand because they didn't have a princess to offer in marriage, and the queen points out that there was that half-demon girl he bought. He should have the slave contract of the girl, who was Anna, and she even had her picture because she knew she was indeed a beautiful girl. The king was delighted because it was truly a brilliant idea that could offer Anna as part of the exchange like a princess in marriage. Still, the king says she was half beast, and she had fox ears and a tail, to which the queen replies that it would be simple. They could hire someone to redraw the portrait, hiding the fox ears and tail she had. The king asks what would happen if the person who killed the dragon found her to be someone else, and she replies that it wouldn't matter. That's because the palace was their territory. Once the person returned to the capital, whether he took the girl alive or dead wouldn't matter as long as he didn't dare oppose the palace. This way, they would have 100 ways to eliminate anyone who tried to turn against them. Meanwhile, Anna was still resting. She was awakened when she was licked and asked Sunayan to stop because it would make her fur all wet. But when she looked, she saw it wasn't the dragon, but a large sheep, and she screamed, wondering if he had transformed into another creature. Suddenly, Sunayan appeared, happy that she was awake, and Anna realized it had all been a dream. She almost died of fright. Still, if Sunayan had been a sheep, it would have been quite cute, and the protagonist himself was confused, wondering if she was complimenting him for being cute like a sheep. At that, Anna became embarrassed because suddenly Sunayan was able to hear her thoughts, and he tells her it was an ability he gained after his evolution. Anna asks if that meant she couldn't think secretly in front of Sunayan anymore, and he laughs, telling her to let him know what she was thinking, and Anna complains that if he kept listening to her thoughts, it would make her angry. Suddenly, the system alerts Sunayan to know that humans were appearing very close to his current territory. There were two options: let nature take its course, which would make it possible for the players not to find the dungeon entrance or give up on attacking it. The second option was to guide the players into the dungeon, but that would put it in danger, and you should be aware of all that. Sunayan was shocked that people had arrived so quickly. His dungeon was so big and magnificently built that it ended up like this. If he were the only one to enjoy it, it would be a bit lonely. He had to let the players have some fun too. He gets excited and commands to guide the players in. He puts Anna on his back, who asks where they were going now. Sunayan replies that they had guests, so they should welcome them. Meanwhile, the players were outside, wondering if they were almost there. The men tell their leader not to worry, they could bring down the dragon with a single shot. The black dragon was the same type they had encountered before, but it wasn't easy to deal with, so everyone should be very careful. This was because Waldole had some reckless and brainless guys who made a huge mess the last time they fought the dragon. Those were all elite players whom the new leader had carefully selected, and not only were they high-level warriors, but they also used firearms. A person approaches, saying they hadn't seen a single monster on the way and didn't even know if they were really in the right place. The person who spoke was a beautiful girl who left the leader quite surprised to see. He noticed that the girl wasn't a player and asks her identity and why she was with their team. She introduces herself as Freya. She was looking for a hero who was about to become a star magi. She knew he must have come there because of King Anlius's notice to kill a black dragon and save the princess. Freya thought that all of them could unite and cooperate, and one of the players immediately begins to object. But the leader stops him, saying it was proper for a beautiful woman to show strength, otherwise it would be too little for him. At that, Freya asks if they had even noticed her presence, if that proved anything to begin with. Suddenly, she took a whistle and blew it, suddenly drawing the attention of a monster that began to attack them. Immediately, the players shot at it, and Freya said to wait because it was her pet. Still, she was surprised because the firearms attack had impressive power and killed the monster instantly. The players became curious because she said the monster was her pet and asked if, in that case, it hadn't died. Freya replied that she was only worried it would be seriously injured if used recklessly, but it was the type that could heal any of them. Suddenly, the creature came back to life after Freya used a potion, and thus the leader of the humans welcomed her to their team. Meanwhile, Sunayan was just watching everything with a smile and suddenly threw a paper at the leader's face from afar through teleportation. The system explains that legend says inside the Silver Moon Forest there was a great dungeon. There was a dark and mysterious place where monstrous creatures hide. Only brave warriors could enter and obtain the infinite treasures inside. And obviously, it was an invitation for the group of players to challenge the Shadow Dungeon as they were awaiting their challenge. The player leader was surprised, but now understood why there hadn't been a single monster along the path up to that point. They were all hiding inside the dungeon the whole time, and the infinite treasure became even more interesting. It was a great conquest proposal. Freya approaches asking what he was holding, and the player immediately panics, tearing the paper and letting it fly away. He says it was just a useless scrap and tells everyone else to pay attention now. The monsters there had all moved with their belongings into the dungeon, and they should take the opportunity to launch a surprise attack. Anna was shocked because they were really planning to ambush them in there, and the army hadn't done anything wrong, yet would still end up dead because of them. Sunayan asks her to be a bit gentler because she even started pulling his scales in the process, and Anna laughs, apologizing. She got angry but promised to be more careful next time. He says he didn't plan to go out, so he calls the attention of the rabbit leader and the jackal, ordering them to get their flaming rabbits and weapons to follow him into the labyrinth. He needed to set up some defensive strategies and also ordered some gnolls to be called. The more monsters were gathered for battle, the better it would be. Soon, they called several monsters into the labyrinth, and the protagonist tried to speak with the great wolf leader, asking if he had any understanding of ferocity. It was the first time he saw creatures that ugly in the world, but none of the great wolves seemed to answer his questions. Those monsters were considered talented. Even if they couldn't fully fight, maybe they could still scare the players somehow. Sunayan tells them that in the labyrinth, if they remain completely still and unnoticed, they could enter an invisible and undetectable state. In that state, humans would have difficulty detecting them. Their mission was to intercept and eliminate all players that appeared inside the labyrinth. In the last 8 days, those areas had been used to set up traps, and if they couldn't win, they should just run for their lives. Sunayan didn't want to see any of them sacrificing themselves for such a cause, and all the wolfmen agreed before walking away. But immediately, the protagonist tells Anna to stop. She, who was disguised as a wolfman, ended up stopping in the middle of the army. She laughed because she had been noticed even though she thought she was being so discreet, and the protagonist responds that he wasn't blind. Sunayan tells her to go back because she couldn't enter the battlefield, and she complains because she was now strong enough to fight. She could protect the 2 dragons. Anna tries to convince the protagonist that she could do it and even makes a cute face. But he denies her again because it was too dangerous. Since the bond between them, Anna's behavior had become much bolder and more cheerful than before. Sunayan should be careful. Maybe he was seeing her true nature being revealed. Then Anna points to the middle of the wolfmen, asking if Selena could go. That's when they noticed that Selena was also among the army, disguised to enter the battlefield. Sunayan pulls her out of there too, and she keeps begging to be allowed to go as well. They both wanted to help in the coming battle. Sunayan now understood who Anna had learned to disobey from, but the fact was that both wanted to help, and now the protagonist would have to deal with them and convince them. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.